Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the podcast you come to when you're finally ready to take fantasy hockey seriously. My name is Nate Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples Ginos, originator of the Zero G draft strategy. And in this episode, Blake and I are continuing our annual projection series in which we review our projections for every fantasy relevant player on all 32 NHL teams. Let's get it. And of course, I have your friend and my best friend. It's Blake Creamer. Blake, how are we feeling tonight?
Oh, good. Very good, buddy. I like when you say it like that. You say it with your chest. All right. And then it makes me feel really good. Yeah, always excited again to get into this with you. And we have some interesting pieces, a couple little bits and pieces that happen with the teams we're talking about here. So I'm excited to get into that with you as well. But yeah, buddy, how you doing? You have a nice week there?
Having a good week. Speaking of chess, looking resplendent, my man. A brand new shirt, showing off a little bit more than some people might typically see, and I'm here for it. I'm not complaining. Get yourself over to the YouTube, is what I'm saying.
Oh, you got to check this out. Yeah, basically, I just went on Amazon and typed in like world's ugliest shirt. And yeah, this is what came up, and I'm excited. Yeah, I did spend $97 on this shirt, though. So yeah, hit us up in the comments. Was this shirt worth it? And yeah, if so, could somebody start a GoFundMe so I can get a second one?
Sounds good, buddy. All right, let's not waste any time. Let's dig into Carolina.
That could be fine.
There it is. Let's start with key departures, of which there are none. And key arrivals, the best I could come up with was Juuso Valimaki ? Now, this was not for a lack of trying on the Hurricanes' part. They acquired the rights to John Carlson before he became officially a UFA and tried to negotiate a contract with him. Sounds like he was more interested in Tampa Bay all along and eventually got his wish there, went there. There is also a lot of rumors about them trying to trade Alexander Nichushkin in a package to acquire Connor Hellebuyck. I do not think the Carolina Hurricanes are done big game hunting yet. Do you think we'll get anything before the beginning of the season here with the Hurricanes?
I just think Tulski's a really fun GM, right? They got lots of pokers in the fire there. This guy's an analytics guy, right? And I'm always interested in the players that he's targeting and trying to figure out why. So, that said, Juuso Valimaki, the juice box. Oh, it's nice to hear this man's name again. I championed him 2 seasons ago, folks. If you want to go back to the archives, and you can see how that turned out. But yeah, he's a beautiful person. But yeah, I'd be happy to see anything coming up here. But they just won the Stanley Cup, so how do you really improve on that? I guess you don't want to rest on your laurels.
Yeah, I don't think they will be able to as long as Rod Brind'Amour is the coach. He's returning for his 9th season there. Finally found the right blend of everything, let his big guns break games for him. I think previously, I'll speak for myself here, but I think you're in line with me that we've been kind of fed up with him as being overly illiberal in the usage of his top players, but it feels like that was a bit of a misapprehension, and this year especially, he really turned loose guys like Svechnikov and Ehlers, especially down the stretch. It seemed like they were starting to get more and more minutes, and they were kind of getting into the flow of games a little bit more and actually winning those games on their own. So when I'm thinking about this team and thinking about the possibility of a Stanley Cup hangover, it feels hard to imagine Rod Brind'Amour allowing such a thing. That being said, it is like a real thing. It's a very real thing where it is very hard to come back the year after. We've had a few good teams do it, and I feel like Carolina is more one of those good teams than not, but where do you land on that spectrum with the Hurricanes here, Blake?
I mean, it's always something that could happen, right? You like the mentals are really hard to project. We can't do that, right? Like, well, what does it feel like when you reach the pinnacle of sport, right? And then you go back and you got to get that drive to do it again, right? But I think that Brind'Amour has really created a culture here in Carolina, and this team has a clear identity, and that hasn't changed whether they win or lose, right? And they were able to finally get that done here in the playoffs. So I feel like, if there is a little bit of a drop off, it's not going to be anything severe. And now they still have some young players that need to come up and prove themselves. You got Seth Jarvis, who's going to be out to start the year. So what does that look like? You've got, goalies that hopefully are going to take over now that Freddie Anderson's gone. So it's going to be really fun to watch, but I just feel like this team is a lock in terms of the way they play. And yeah, I'm not expecting a big drop off, to be honest.
All right, let's dig in on the power play. I think when healthy, Sebastian Aho, Shane Gostisbehere, Seth Jarvis are locks. I'm curious your thoughts on Svechnikov. He definitely became a mainstay, I would say, over the course of this year, but previously he had been kind of on and off the power play, the top power play throughout the year. Mm-hmm. So is this season all that you need to say, yeah, 100% he's a lock all year, or do you think that there's a chance that he could still get moved off if the power play goes through a rough stretch? And then also I want to evaluate what we have in terms of the kind of Jordan Staal, Nikolaj Ehlers dynamic, where Staal would often be on the top power play, take the face off, maybe go to the net, get one chance. If it gets cleared out, he's going to the bench and Nikolaj Ehlers is coming on. And then Ehlers would usually just stay on with the second power play unit for the rest of the time. And it would end up with Ehlers being one of the guys with the most power play time on the team when they went to that, just because of that dynamic. Jackson Blake, the next guy up in most cases. So let's start with Svechnikov. Do you really think that he's 100% locked in top power play all year, or do you think there's still a pretty good chance that he could get rotated out if things start to go south at some point?
I think that he has a much stronger hold on it. That's for sure. Obviously, the performance he had last year, 29 power play points, 12 power play goals, that'll play, right? But I think, and last year too, he was a big part of it. He had a 64% power play share last season, but only 18 power play points. Still a bunch of goals, but yeah, the power play wasn't as good last year. This year, it was fifth best in goals for per 60. That is very, very nice. So you love to see that. They were 11th in expected goals for per 60 as well. So just a wagon of a power play, and Svech was a big part of it, but I think that Ehlers was an even bigger part of it. And that is, to me, the major difference that really drove the success of this power play this last year. So I think that all that to say, I'm pretty confident that Svech will be there. This is their guy now. He needs to figure out how to not take bad penalties, though. I think that is still something that is a potential problem with Svech and will potentially, maybe get some consequences from RBA here and there, maybe starting with, okay, yeah, now you're on power play 2 for a couple games until you stop, being a dingus out there. But other than that, yeah, I think he's locked in for 60% plus power play share.
Yeah, I agree with all that. You look at what happened to the Winnipeg Jets power play too, 24-25. They are tops in the league with a 28.9% power play conversion percentage. This year they drop all the way to 24th in the league, 18.5%. Yeah. Huge drop off. What's the difference there? Ehlers is gone. I think that was a huge percentage of it. I'm not going to say that he accounted for 10%, but you look at where these two power plays were a year ago. Ehlers comes off of one, goes on to the other, and all of a sudden you have this massive difference, reversal in fortunes for both teams in opposite directions, and he's the common thread. So I think that's a fair assessment to make. I do think that it's interesting to note that Jackson Blake could be that next guy up, especially with Jarvis out to start the year. Is Jackson Blake going to get a good run of top power play time here to start the season? That would be very interesting for me, especially as just like a late round dart throw that's going to get power play 1 to start the year. Obviously a very good team. We saw how effective that second line was. If he's being effective at even strength, even if it's not really full top line minutes, and now he's getting power play 1 to boot, I think Jackson Blake is very, very interesting in your drafts for that reason alone. Let's dig in on the projections then, Blake. We got to start with Sebastian Aho, as we do every year. For me, 31 goals, 53 assists, rounding up to 85 points. For you, 32 goals, 50 assists, 82 points. So we're pretty tight on Sebastian Aho. It's pretty hard to miss on a Sebastian Aho projection. He's one of the more consistent players league-wide year in, year out. I don't think I need to say too much about this. I would be shocked if Aho wasn't within plus or minus 5 points of our projections here.
It's really fun. I mean, fun's not the right word, actually. It's really safe. Aho is one of the most consistent and boring fantasy options out there. And the longer this goes on, I feel like the more he's underrated we're doing mock drafts here, at APL scoring from our Discord, and I've seen Aho going in the 6th round. Sometimes once I think even the 7th. Like, how? That's a point per game player that has done it year after year. I feel like, the only real variance we're seeing with Aho is whether he gets it done on the power play or not. But his even strength scoring, rock solid. This guy's a stud as a penalty killer as well, puts up lots of shorthanded points. So I feel really good about this projection here because I feel really good about Carolina's power play moving forward with Ehlers in the mix there. Even with Jarvis out, like you said, I think Jackson Blake can step in there. They can still have Jordan Staal take the faceoffs, rip off, get Ehlers out there. Like it's all systems go. I think there's the pieces in place to have a really good season. One thing I did notice that I wanted to mention with RBA and kind of some of the stuff that I noticed he changed is they sort of went away a little bit from that Carolina blueprint, which was kind of, retrieve the puck in the D zone, dump it out, forwards kind of glom onto that, win the battle, dump it in, then they forecheck their brains out and then start, kind of their in zone play. One of the things that happened this year is RBA sort of prioritized puck possession in entering the zone with possession a little bit more. And I think that really benefited players like the good rushers on this team, like Aho, Svechnikov, Ehlers, Jarvis. These are all great puck rushers, right? And that was something that I noticed a little bit. And that's why I still feel really good about Aho's floor, right? Like they changed the system just a little bit where it even benefits Aho maybe a little bit more. So all that to say, yeah, pretty much the safest player you can pick in the top 5 rounds. If you get him outside of that, it's a smash.
Can't agree much more with that. Let's talk about Andrei Svechnikov. This is actually the player we disagree on the most. Like, you are 7.5 points higher on your projection for Svechnikov than I am. I have him for 31 goals, 40 assists, 71 points. You have him for 32 goals, 46 assists, 78 points. So let's talk about it here a little bit. I'm curious if it's more of a power play thing or if it's more of an even strength thing. So let's dig in a little bit here. So let's just go with the raw numbers. 27 power play points is what I have him for.
Yeah, I got it for 29.
Okay, so half of, or I guess a quarter of it is just the power play, but that means a good chunk of it is even strength. So I have him for 14 minutes at even strength. I'm with a 69% IPP, which is pretty nice. I'm for 34 shots, 4 per 60, 9.5% on ice shooting percentage. Any big differences there?
Yeah, mostly I've got him for 71 IPP. I've got him for 14-15 time on ice. And then on ice shooting percentage, I've got him at 10-12. So just chipping away there to kind of make up those extra points, I think. And then, yeah, the shots 4 per 60, I've got 34.7. So even just a touch high there.
Okay. So just slightly higher kind of across the board on all the main metrics that go into our projection there. Yeah, I don't think that I'm necessarily down on Svechnikov, but I don't know that I think it's better for him. Like Jarvis being out, I don't think is better for him this year. I think there is potential for a bit of a lull this year. I just feel like Svechnikov has not been a consistent player really at any single point in his career. And he might be rounding into form, in his mid-20s here. That would be totally understandable, but I'm not going to necessarily bank on it. That being said, it would not shock me at all to see him come out of this season with 78 points either. I don't know if you have any kind of reverse sentiment to share there.
You know what? I think the only thing I disagree with you on there is that Jarvis being out, I don't think hurts Svech, because I believe that it's going to be Ehlers that goes up to the top line. And what have we seen from Ehlers? Ehlers is not a player like Seth Jarvis is. They're different profile of player, but I think that Ehlers, first off, his facilitation, his speed, his ability to enter the zone, I think that's only going to benefit Svech, and especially the on ice shooting percentage there. I feel like that's, that should be rock solid as well. I think Svech is going to get all the high danger passes he can handle from Ehlers and Aho. And I do think he's rounding into form a little bit. Like I said, I think he needs to get these penalties sorted out. I still projected him for 69 penalty minutes. Not nice. Okay. He's tooting in our faces. We need you out on the ice there, bud. But I think that Ehlers being there for a little bit is actually going to be a little bit of a boost for Svechnikov. And then I kept him kind of at the same rate on the power play, because I do believe in that power play. Like I said, 11th best in expected goals for, 5th best in actual goals for. I don't see why that would change moving forward next year. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Plus, he's an absolute beefcake. Oh my God. So yeah, I'm in on Svech this year. I would say this is kind of closer to ceiling, right? A ceiling projection here. I've got him 78.5. I think yours is, I could see him going down if he has a poor season down to like 65. I could see that happening, right? He can regress back to kind of what he's done before, but I do believe this is a player taking a step. I love the second line here in Carolina as well. And I think that frees up just a lot more room too for the first line to get the biz. It didn't so much in the playoffs, but over an 84 game season, I think it's really going to help Svech.
All right, Seth Jarvis next year, projected for 60 games based on, we're just trying to estimate based on the games played that we have in the first few months that he's expected to miss. So my estimation for Seth Jarvis based on 60 games played was 26 goals, 26 assists, 52 points. Blake, you had him for only 20 goals, but 32 assists for, again, 52 points. So same on the points, a little bit different on the goal scoring there between the two of us. I guess you just kind of hate him a lot more than I do in terms of his goal scoring ability. I am not like super concerned. Like, obviously, the thing that you worry about with a player who's going to be out for the beginning of the season is what it'll look like when they get back into the lineup. You worry about them not being at midseason form when everybody else is in midseason form, that kind of thing. This is a shoulder injury, which is not. I'm always more worried about lower body injuries for that kind of thing, where you feel like if they rush back, then they could not be 100% when they get back, and then it's really hard to train and to get up to game speed while you're still not 100% in kind of the most crucial area of the game in your lower body. Whereas you see like Jack Hughes comes back and maybe he's not feeling 100%, and really all it translates to is he shoots like 5% for the first 7 games, and then he's back to normal and is terrific down the stretch. So, I'm not too worried about it. It is like a pretty extensive surgery that he had, torn labrum and rotator cuff. Like, it was a pretty big deal. So I'm not going to shortchange that piece of it. But overall, I feel like I didn't really discount him too much in terms of what I expect him to be once he's back in the lineup. How do you feel?
Yeah, I'm right with you there. I think I did, shave off a little bit of efficiency with his shooting, right? Because of the shoulder. Right. I think there will be, even if it's just 10 games, right, where he's kind of getting his mechanics back, getting that shooting back to, full torque. That's going to affect his mentals, first off, to even shoot the puck, right? He's a fine distributor as well. He's really good, chance assists, shot assists, all those things. And he's playing with really good players as well. I think he'll just go right back to line one. That definitely works. So yeah, I just think that we'll see more of a facilitator for a section of the year. And then that's kind of where I'm a little bit down on the goal scoring, but man, I love this player. Like, he fits the Canes so well. He's a big time rusher. And, like I said, I think this team is prioritizing rushing and possession play in zone a little bit more, and I think that is going to help Jarvis. And this guy's such a dog on the forecheck as well. He's always hounding players in the D zone. Good facilitator, good periffs. I feel good about this. I think moving forward, like in dynasty or keepers, like if you got Jarvis, like this surgery is a major win for you, because he's been playing with this injury for like 2 seasons, right? He's kind of just been gutting it out. And now he's getting the job done, and he's going to be, I think he'll come back even stronger once he kind of gets over that little section of games there. But I'm a big fan. That all said, I'm not loving drafting players that are injured going into the season. So I don't know how much Seth Jarvis I'm really going to have this year. I think it's a fine stash. Like, we can't predict these things. Like, he could come back and light it up, just start, his efficiency could go nuclear. His line mates could be playing really well. So that said, I just feel like there's safer options there. And then, like, with an injury like this, Nate, where are you comfortable drafting a guy like Seth Jarvis?
Yeah, I think without the injury, you're probably looking at a guy in like the 5th, 6th round is where Jarvis probably would have fallen for us. And so with the injury, yeah, it's not an insignificant amount of time that he's going to miss, right? Like 7 or 8 weeks of the fantasy season. Like, that's a big chunk of your season. Your season you might be 0-7 if you take him too early and you can't kind of get around that. If you don't have say you took him two rounds later, you took him in the 8th round, you don't have your 8th round pick. What if your 5th and 6th round picks also get injured or miss in a bad way. There's a lot of ways in which you can kind of hamstring your team early on by over investing in players like this. Now, taking a swing on a guy who's injured just to stash, I think is fine, but I am trying to get a guy like this, even with his high end upside down the stretch. I am trying to push him more into the double digit rounds personally. And if somebody else gets him and he's doing great for them down the stretch, then so be it. But I am trying to play it a little safer with injuries because, like you said, it could be a situation where he does push himself back too quickly and he does struggle to put pucks in the net and he's not nearly as effective of a player. And now you've got him in your lineup and he's not even doing well for you. He's kind of like a black hole that you can't drop now because you've invested so much in him. He's been on your IR for the whole time. And so that is something that enters my conscious as well. And there's going to be another player we'll talk about who has a similar situation. So that is something that I'm definitely taking into consideration. I will say too, it does matter to me how difficult your league projects to be. If it's a league that you routinely beat up on people, then sure, go nuts. Like add the guy, throw him on your IR and bring him in later because you'll be able to be doing just fine without him. Like if that's your situation, then sure. But in a league that you expect to be very competitive and you need every edge you can get, then I'm more cautious.
That's every league for us, right, Nate?
Pretty much. Yeah. Something like that anyway.
Sure. One of us maybe.
All right, let's talk about the second line here. Obviously, went nuclear in the playoffs was a tremendous reason why the Hurricanes did come away with the Stanley Cup in the end. Starting with Logan Stankoven, I have for 21 goals, 29 assists, 50 points. You have for 24 goals, 27 assists, 51 points. Pretty tight on the projection here. I like Stankoven. I think of all these players, I just don't know that I see a path for him to really pop off this year. I'm not sure what that path would be. Like, I don't think he's next in line for power play 1, even if there are multiple injuries. I don't think he's a guy who's going to, take Aho's place and be on the first line getting those extra Aho minutes at even strength. Like, I'm trying to find the high-end ceiling scenario for Logan Stankoven, and I don't really see it there. I think, like, the absolute high end is probably around 60 points for Logan Stankoven this year with the Hurricanes. And at 50 points, like he's probably just a streamer for me more often than not.
Yep. Such a fun line and such an interesting line to dig into because there is fantasy value here, right? And certainly at a streamer level, like we're going to have to decide how we want to manage this. But yeah, I think we've talked about this line a lot this offseason already. I think separately, like you said, all three players close to streamer level, right? But we can't deny how this line was able to drive play pretty much all season and into the playoffs. And I wanted to dig in even more. Like I looked up their line on hockeystats.com. This line right here was the top line in the entire league in terms of raw expected goals for over McKinnon's line, over the Mark Scheifele line, over McDavid, right? This line, right? That's wild stuff, right? And they scored the 4th most goals as a line at even strength as well. So just a perfectly crafted line. We've talked about why. I mean, they all kind of play a different role, but they're all able to kind of jump into each other's roles if needed, right? But yeah, that worries me a little bit in terms of fantasy too, because I think this line is a lot better together. What happens when injuries happen, right? Are they going to be able to find that same level of success? And like you said, the success for Stankoven so far, 50 points. So is he going to jump into another line that has a higher expected goals than number 1 in the entire league? No, right? So can we, in good conscience be like, yeah, he's going to get more than what he did last year, right? So those are the things I'm a little bit worried about here, but I do love these players. I love Stankoven. I love what he's able to bring. The ice time as well is a problem for all three of these guys. Maybe Jackson Blake, I'll hold him out and we'll talk about him in a second, but Stankoven and Taylor Hall, I think the ice time, they're just not going to get the premium deployment, right? They were both under 16 minutes here this season, just under 16 minutes. That's fine. But I think if you bump all those players up to 19 minutes, now we're looking at like real fantasy assets, guys that we're drafting. But I think I don't see how the deployment goes up, right? Even with the injury to Jarvis, like I think they're going to keep that line together. So yeah, all that to say, I think these are going to be great streamers, much better players in real life than for fantasy, Stankoven included. I'd love to see him get a little bit better at faceoffs. If he could fix his faceoffs, maybe there is a pathway to him getting on power play 1, especially early on here. Like maybe instead of Jordan Staal out there, like, you get Stankoven out there, right? But we need some face-off dubs, buddy. So I think that's kind of, keeping him off the top power play, and he's blocked by a bunch of other players. But anyways, love the player, better in real life than in fantasy.
Yep, totally agree with that. Taylor Hall, obviously another mainstay on this line, and also a guy who definitely benefits from some added rush play that they experienced last year. I have him for 18 goals, 38 assists, 56 points. You have him for 22 goals, 33 assists, and 55 points. So again, very tight on the projection here. I think he's a good fit. Again, a player that I think is probably more dependent on this line staying together as constructed than some of the others. That being said, I do think Hall is a pretty solid power play guy in his own right as well. I don't think there's, again, similar to Stankoven, I think he's pretty far down the pecking order in terms of who might be up next for power play one usage. So I don't expect to see him crop up there or to see his power play share go up anytime soon. So all that kind of leaves you, again, in a range where he's probably more of a streamer in most leagues than a guy that you're going to hang on to all year, but definitely a useful one.
Yeah, still, what a pickup here for Eric Tulsky. Like, this guy's unbelievable. It's worth mentioning how good Taylor Hall was off the rush last year. Like, this guy, in terms of his micro stats, like he was in the 97th percentile in chance assists. He was in the 95th percentile in shot assists. So generating a ton for guys like Jackson Blake, mostly Jackson Blake, right? And then obviously, Logan Stankoven as well was shooting a bunch. But I think a guy like Taylor Hall, if he was 10 years younger doing this, like this exact same thing, we'd be salivating. Be like, oh my God, this guy, like, give this guy some ice time. What are we doing? But at this point in his career, he's definitely kind of a supplementary offensive piece, albeit one of the best, honestly, one of the best supplementary offensive pieces out there. I'm definitely going to be streaming some Taylor Hall in this year.
Absolutely. Next up on that line, Jackson Blake, saving the best for last year in my estimation. I have him for 24 goals, 37 assists, 61 points. You have him for 24 goals, 35 assists, and 59 points. That is Jackson Blake, the guy who led all Carolina forwards in even strength time on ice in the playoffs. To you, sir, as I mentioned before, with the power play stuff, I think Jackson Blake has ceiling early in the season. I think he's going to get to biz at even strength. I think he is a guy that is on that like Aho trajectory of Brind'Amour actually will play this guy more than he will play anybody else on the team. So that part has me excited, and is reflected a little bit in my projections where I have him with a little bit more ice time than everybody except Aho at even strength. So it's close. Like Brind'Amour still does kind of flatten out all that even strength ice time for sure, but it is just a little bit more for Blake, and that's what has me excited about him, especially with that potential power play role early in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And he had a great season last year, like 53 points in 81 games. That'll play. He was on my roster quite a bit, 12 power play points, 16 and a half minutes average time on ice. Like, yeah, I think that of the three, this is the guy that his play style could potentially complement another line, hopefully like line one, right? An offensive line, right? If we want to see a true ceiling here for Jackson Blake. And, also he's one of the best forecheckers in the league. Jackson Blake at this age, right? How old is he? 20. He's turning 23. One of the best forecheckers, like in all the underlying metrics of forecheck pressures and actually, winning puck battles. This guy's one of the best in the entire league at this age, right? So that is no small feat. That is something that should be coveted by any line, and that is something that can absolutely supplement any line. You got a guy like this going into the corner. Kind of, we talked about Josh Doan last episode. Like, this guy's better. He's better at it, so I'm a big fan of Jackson Blake. He's just able to extend possessions like almost single-handedly sometimes, and you'd love to see that. Still a young guy. That said, I'm not quite ready to make a huge projection. I've got him for 58.7. You got him for 61. I love that. I think that's probably where he does land. I feel pretty confident about that, unless there's injuries and he's able to maintain power play one all year. Maybe he gets bumped up the line. Like, I feel like, whereas Taylor Hall is a guy that's kind of, he's going to the twilight of his career. Jackson Blake is on the ascension, right? And it would not surprise me at some point in this year to see him playing on the top line, top power play, bigger minutes, right? Like you said, he played the most, was it even strength minutes in the playoffs? Like, yep. Hell yeah. And didn't he lead the team in points? Like, this is amazing stuff for Jackson Blake. So, I think it's wheels up. I don't know if it happens this next year, but he's draftable for sure. Where are you comfortable picking up Jackson Blake?
Yeah, I mean, so far I haven't even had to really try. He's there in double-digit rounds, and I'm super happy about that. Like with this projection, 61 points, that's 15 power play points. If he's on that top power play to start the season, like I don't know, I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that he could score at a 25 power play point rate, and that would put him over 70 points as a rate for early on
Dang.
in the season if he's on that top power play. And so yeah, to pick up a guy with a 70-point base projection in like the 12th round. I think you're loving life if you're able to pick that up any time of the day. All right, Jordan Stahl next up. Not too exciting, but he is still a key member of this squad, obviously winning the Conn Smythe Trophy on their Stanley Cup run.
Crazy.
I have him for 18 goals and 21 assists for 39 points. You have him for 19 goals, 19 assists, 38 points. I think there's not going to be too much to this. I don't think he's going to generate a lot of power play goals. I think the playoff run was just that. It was a run, and it's unlikely to continue for him to, score in 5 straight games and to do all those crazy things that he was doing. Was it 4 or 5? Anyway, it was ridiculous.
I turned it off at that point. I don't know.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive either way for a man of his stature and age in the league.
And
But
haircut.
and haircut. But I do think that it's still a guy that you're probably going to look at in your deeper leagues for a stream some weeks, especially if he is getting that power play one role where he at least takes the face off, maybe goes to the front of the net, maybe whacks one in before he gets off. So it's still a guy that you have to keep in the back of your mind for your deeper leagues.
I hope he does whack a couple in before he gets off. That would be good for anybody, really. Jordan Stahl. I don't know where I went with that, but yeah, I think we know what we're getting here. There's no chance that it goes up, right? Like, but what an amazing performance in the playoffs! Like, shout out to this guy. It was a great performance, and he's still playing. He played 18 minutes average time on ice in the playoffs, so he's still good to go. He's still a big part of this team. So I think, yeah, at this level, you're streaming him in potentially, like if he can get power play one. That all said, he shot a ridiculous, 18% in the regular season, like 20, something crazy in the playoffs. Like, I don't even know what it was, but yeah, that's going to come down. So we can't expect really the goals. He's a good beefer though. Good hits, good blocks, streamer level. And that's all I got to say about Jordan Stahl.
22% in the playoffs.
22. Oh my God, buddy. Well done.
All right. Last of the forwards here, Nikolaj Ehlers. I have for 29 goals, 48 assists, 77 points. You have for 30 goals, 47 assists, 77 points. So we're right on track with the point totals there. Obviously, a guy that we've been high on for a long time. Felt like it really started to all come together towards the back half of last year and through the playoffs, where he was just a tremendously effective player in this kind of revamped Carolina system, as we've mentioned. I am open to the idea of him being on the Ho Svechnikov line to start the season. I don't know that it's totally locked in. I feel like they did kind of like what they had going with him being kind of the catalyst of a third line that could also score from time to time. So it wouldn't shock me to see even like a Bradley Dodot get an early look on the top line and them just to try to continue to spread the wealth as they often have in the past. I think there's a few ways that they could skin that cat, so to speak. So I think that either way, Ehlers is going to get more ice time. I think that actually did happen in the back half of the year. Like his ice time went up as he got more comfortable and as he started to produce. The ice time came up as a result. So I do think that part is pretty locked in. And honestly, I'm not sure that it matters who Nikolaj Ehlers plays with. I think he's one of the most dynamic one-on-one players in the league. His speed and creativity with the puck off the rush, as you've mentioned, just a sight to behold. Must-watch hockey when he's on the ice. So big fan of Nikolaj Ehlers. I feel like this 77-point projection is honestly right in line. I could see him going higher than this. You could also see a pullback for a variety of reasons on a team like this where they have a number of options that could get it going at any different point. But overall, feel pretty confident in a strong year for Nikolaj Ehlers.
Yeah, it feels really, really good. Like, this guy's one of the premium rushers in the entire NHL, and he has been for a long time. And I remember like 2 or 3 years ago, pretty much every year he was playing with Winnipeg, we're like, when is he going to get, a bump in ice time? When is he going to get on power play one? And they were hemming and hawing, right? And now we've seen, 2 years proof of concept, right? This he's amazing, right? And I'm so glad that he landed here in Carolina. He doesn't need more ice time than what he got last year. It would help, it would certainly help. But like, he got 16 minutes, 36 seconds average time on ice. That'll play. 29 power play points, 10 goals on the power play. It's awesome. So yeah, I think that's the real question with Ehlers, where maybe we're getting, a plus or minus of like 5 points, is like, yeah, do they keep him on that third line, which was absolutely viable last year? He played with Jordan Martinook and Jordan Stahl, got to biz there, got to biz on the power play, no problem. Or do they bump him up to that top line? My gut is telling me that they'll put him up on the top line to play with those guys, and maybe give Bradley Nadeau a shot on, maybe even starting on the third line there. Because they did that. They've done that with Seth Jarvis before too. Play with the two grumpy old men, right? Like get them on the left side there and sort of develop them. Maybe that doesn't hold all year, but I do think Ehlers is going to see more time with more offensive players. I think it'll help. Like you said, I think you could put Ehlers, plug him in with anybody, and he's going to make that line better. So yeah, we'll see. But he's just such a fun player to watch. And I'm so excited to hopefully get him in some of my drafts this year.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the defense. Carolina does actually have a pretty interesting defense for fantasy purposes as well. You did a projection for Jacob Slavin. God bless you, sir. 4 goals, 22 assists, 26 points. I do not think you have to think about Jacob Slavin again for fantasy purposes this season. Do you have anything to add there, Blake?
He's a good defenseman.
Yes, he is very good at the hockey. K'Andre Miller, also very good at the hockey, but also fantasy relevant. I have him for 8 goals, 34 assists, and 43 points with the round up there. You have him for 8 goals, 33 assists, 41 points. So definitely a strong candidate to, kind of put him in that Thomas Chabot kind of area of your draft. You think he's going to be a power play 2, but you think he's going to be around that point every other game kind of threshold, that 40-point-ish threshold. And that's going to be good enough to be on your roster and potentially even stay on your roster all season in some deeper leagues. So definitely K'Andre Miller is a guy that you have to have on your radar later in your drafts. If you miss out on some of the defensemen that you're hoping to get, K'Andre Miller might just be that kind of guy that you can actually leave in your lineup all year long. And it might not look great every single week of the year, but by the end of the year, you're going to be like, yeah, more often than not, it was a good idea to have him in my lineup. Anything to add on Miller?
I want to hear, if somebody drafts K'Andre Miller and keeps him in their lineup all year, definitely DM us and let us know, because we're going to give you a prize. We're going to give you something. We have to celebrate you, because that would be a tough hold all year. I don't know. I didn't feel good about this projection, honestly, but it's just the way he fits in Carolina's system. We last year with New York, it was one of the worst defensive performances. Miller in particular was just getting walked out there like a dog. All right, on the blue line. He's a pylon out there, but his style and what he does well, kind of north-south, passing north-south, it lends itself to less giveaways, right? And Carolina kind of does that. So I think that, he's serviceable for fantasy. There's no ceiling to me. But I'm just not seeing the offense there on a consistent basis. I do, however, think that one of the main reasons that Miller had such a good season was Sean Walker, was playing with Sean Walker. This is a guy that I think he's actually a better offensive defenseman than Miller, but he gets less points. And I feel like, Sean Walker walked so K'Andre Miller could run. Okay. And I think that's what's so K'Andre Miller could mill, right? That I was right there, and damn it, Nate will edit that in post, no problem. But I think it's a pretty safe projection. But it's not a guy like there are lots of 40-point defensemen out there. To me, like I just don't see any ceiling past that. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think there's a ton of ceiling there, unless there is a situation where Gostisbehere goes down to injury, which obviously he has a history of. Mm-hmm. And if they have really kind of soured on Alexander Nichushkin, which we'll get to, then maybe Miller does go up and get some top power play time. I could see that potential scenario, but there are a lot of options beyond Gostisbehere if he does go down again. It's a salient point about Sean Walker. I do think he's a really effective defenseman. He shoots, he hits, he blocks, he does all that stuff for fantasy, so that part is nice. I'm for 9 goals, 23 assists, 32 points. I'm for 8 goals, 25 assists, 33 points. So both of us have him kind of in that range where, again, it's probably more of a streamer play. I don't agree that he's a better offensive defenseman than Miller. I think Miller's more efficient, at least in this system, than Walker is, but I do think that Walker probably presents more general fantasy goodness. If you're in a Bangers Cats league, I'd probably have Walker over Miller for that reason alone, just the cross-category coverage. So I think there's I think they both work very well together, and that was a big reason for both of their success in this system this past season.
Well, you'd be wrong, Nate. All right, damn it. But it happens to everybody. As everybody can be wrong once in a while. Nate, I'm sorry about this, but Sean Walker, absolute legend. One of the things I love about Carolina, and this was talked about a lot, so we're not going to go into it too much, but like how they prioritized fit as opposed to just getting like toolsy players. Like we're getting players with size, that like it can skate. It's like, no, we're getting Logan Stankoven. We're getting Sean Walker. We're getting Shane Gostisbehere. These are slight players, right? But they fit the system really well. Sean Walker in particular, like this guy's been unbelievable. I talked about last episode, I was talking about Corey Schneider's microstats rushed exits, right? Which basically is, when he goes, the puck is in the defensive zone, he goes to retrieve it, rushed exits. That metric is how effectively he does that, right? He's being rushed. Can he get a successful zone exit with that? And Sean Walker was 5th in that metric. This guy's a machine. So, I love that. And I think, again, that really is going to help a guy like Keandre Miller, so he can get the puck in stride, connect to other players. But yeah, I'm talking a lot about Sean Walker here. He's a streamer, folks. I mean, you can pick him up with bangers. I mean, 141 hits, 125 blocks. That'll play. Who whizzed in your cornflakes, Mr. Walker? All right. But I don't know. That's all I got to say about that. I think it's a really fun player, and I'm looking forward to watching him as well. He's a player of interest for me.
All right, Shane Gostisbehere, obviously the top power play quarterback there. I have him for 14 goals, 54 assists, 68 points. You have him for 15 goals, 48 assists, 63 points. I think this was the player on Carolina I was the most high on relative to you, 5.7 points difference between our two projections there. Yep. I'm for 28.7 power play points. What did you get him for on the power play points side of things there, Blake?
27. Okay. Big 2-7. Oh, yeah.
So it is more still on the even strength side of things. I think Gostisbehere is a risky play, but I mean, if he's going to put up 60 plus points, and I kind of think he probably will, unless, things really go south this year for Carolina. You can't really argue with getting him in like the 9th or 10th round of your draft, which is where he's been going in our APL mocks. So, I think Gostisbehere is a perfectly cromulent option later on. I do think there are going to be some weeks where you're probably going to be like, why am I hanging on to this guy? Just because he doesn't really provide a whole lot of anything if he's not getting those points. And there will be some times where he's not getting a whole lot of even strength minutes. You'll see the 16-minute game crop up on the score sheet, and you'll be like, oh man, is it all over? I don't think it will be anytime soon because of how, I think he bought himself a lot of cachet with how good that power play was last year and how good he was in particular on it. I do think he's actually one of the primary drivers of that power play alongside Ehlers and how good it was. So I am giving him a lot of credit for that, I will admit.
Oh, he's got cachet, baby. He's got cachet out the yin yang. Yeah, you're flying tonight with your vocab, man. I'm loving this. I'm going to have a lot to look up after the show, but that's fine. Love Shane Gostisbehere, and I love the value because, he's still this guy doesn't play 20 minutes. So I think you're looking at the numbers, and I mean, 50 points in 55 games. I think if you're box score hunting and looking at Shane Gostisbehere, maybe you're not seeing the absolute value that he brings. And like you said, the play driving that he brings out there, and you can get him really late in your drafts. I love that. He's going to play the same sheltered role, right? But he's going to be the Canes' best offensive defenseman by a lot. Right. That said, too, I mean, in terms of where I'm at with I've got him for 62.6. You got him for 68. I think, his IPP was 58% at even strength last year. For a defenseman, that's high, folks. That's very, very high. And that's higher than what he's had previously in his career, right? He's been in the 50s before. So it's not abnormal, but do I want to project it that way? I don't know about that, right? And his on-ice shooting percentage took a big jump last year as well. Let's just credit Nikolaj Ehlers for everything, right? Nikolaj Ehlers is here. Your on-ice shooting percentage is going to the moon, but I regress those things a little bit, but I still think this is a premium offensive defenseman that you can feel comfortable if you didn't get one of these top tier or even second tier guys. I'm doing this in a couple of our APL mocks. Is all right, my first 7 picks were not defensemen. So who's out there now? And you're looking at Shane Gostisbehere, and that looks pretty good to me.
Yep. All right, last one here. Alexander Nikishin, I have for 10 goals, 22 assists, 32 points. You have him for 12 goals, 25 assists, 37 points. I think the biggest question with Nikishin is, will he play a lot of minutes? Because he really got diminished. To my eye, and at least a lot of others that I saw online, it was not a terrific showing for him in the playoffs. Kind of went the wrong direction in the playoffs. You would love to see him kind of step up and be an impact player, and it didn't really pan out that way. Obviously, still relatively new to the league, but not a terribly young player. Played a bunch of years in the KHL before coming over. And yeah, a subject of trade rumors as well. It seems like the Hurricanes are not terribly high on him overall. So I do think this is probably about as good as it's going to get for the Hurricanes. I would love to see what he could do in a different situation. If he got the, Bowen Byram deal where he goes to a bad team and just gets walked straight to power play one and 22 minutes a night all year, I'd be very interested in what he could do with that kind of situation because, yeah, he does it all. He shoots, he hits, he blocks. All that stuff is there for him. It's just the raw minutes. Like I have him projected for 18 minutes, 20 and 15 seconds average time on ice this year. And unless there's major injuries and other reasons for him to get promoted up the lineup, I don't see it getting much better than this mid 30s kind of point projection that we have.
Yeah, it's rough because we're looking at a guy that we were excited about last year, rightfully so, and should be excited about again, just as a player for fantasy, right? He does all the things we like. He's a really good shooter. This guy's got a bomb. He hits like a truck. This guy hits everything that moves out there. But yeah, I feel like this might be a case of a defenseman, like you said, needs to be on maybe a worse team. Like Carolina, it's cup or bust for them. That's where they're at right now. So are they really wanting to trot out a guy like kind of a more of a risky player like Nikishin out there when you have guys like Slavin, Walker, Miller? These guys get the biz. They know how to play Carolina Hurricane hockey. Nikishin is just stuck on that third pairing with Shane Gostisbehere, the sheltered minutes. And that's not going to be enough. We're not going to see Nikishin's ceiling here. I wonder what they're going to do. If they trade him to another team, I think it's probably going to be a boost. It should be a boost for him. I've got him for 19 minutes. That's not enough. So I'd like to see him around the 21-minute mark. I could see maybe like a beefier version of Dougie Hamilton. I would love to see something like that. But yeah, until that happens, I think we're kind of stuck in the 30 to 35 point range.
All right, Blake, we're at that point. Top 3 targets. Give it to me.
Give it to me, Nate. Oh, yeah, Nathan. I got Ehlers as my number 1 for all the reasons mentioned. I think this guy's a play-driving freak. And, really not a coming out party for Ehlers because we knew what he was. But like you said, he kind of eased into the year, had kind of a rough first quarter, and then it was blast off time, and then into the playoffs. This guy's a beauty. And again, I think you can still get him at really good value. He's left wing, right wing eligible in most places, so that's good. Jackson Blake's my number 2 for the reasons we mentioned. There's some upside there with potential for power play 1. And then I've got Shane Gostisbehere as my 3rd because of the, again, extreme value you can get Gostisbehere at. He does a lot with very little. He doesn't need a bunch of minutes, and he's going to get you a ton of points.
Yep. Same 3 players for me, just slightly different order. Jackson Blake, I have number 1 just because I think he's going to be in your double-digit rounds, and he could produce like a 7th round pick for the first few months at least while Seth Jarvis is working his way back, and that might be enough to set you up for a playoff run, quite honestly, depending on your squad. So love that pick. And Nikolaj Ehlers, number 2, for all the reasons we've talked about here. Shane Gostisbehere for all those reasons as well. Don't think we need to spend more time there, but definitely those 3 players. And I mean, I love Sebastian Aho in the 5th round, late 5th round. Big value every single year. So always got to shout him out, but a little less exciting maybe than some of these others. All right, we got to get into Chicago. Unfortunately, that is the thing that we have to do every single year. Departures here, nothing really to write home about. Andre Burakovsky, Nick Foligno, Jason Dickinson, Louis Crevier. Obviously, Foligno and Dickinson coming in season at the trade deadline. Key arrivals here, Patrick Kane, Bowen Byram, the big ones this offseason. Incoming rookies, Roman Kantserov, Nick Lardis, who did play towards the end of last year, and Ian Cole coming in to be a defensive defenseman for this squad as well. Now, Blake, the question here with all this movement and like 2 legitimate acquisitions here in Kane and Byram, has the putrefaction of this roster finally ended with the new arrivals?
No, it's still putrid. But I feel like there's some light. You can see some light at the end of the tunnel. Connor Bedard signing that extension as well. Like that's a great sign for this franchise in general. Patrick Kane was a really nice pick as well. I don't think talking about Chicago would be as negative if Bedard didn't have this brutal injury and then shoulder surgery going into the season. Like I think we could look at them and be like, yeah, maybe they'll push. Maybe they'll push for the playoffs, not make it, but they'll take a step, they'll push, and we'll see some really good fantasy performances from some of their top players. Now it's like we're kind of left like, okay, how is this going to work? We got a bunch of new players in here. Roman Kanserov as well. Like, I had to watch some of his highlights. I didn't know who that was, right? So I'm watching his highlights and looking at some of his underlying metrics. Then young players like Oliver Moore, Nick Lardis, Frondell. We're going to talk about all these guys, but trying to project who's going to take a step, it's really tough. But this is what we do. We do it for the people. But yeah, all that to say, I'm looking forward to talking about Chicago again in like a month. I think that'll be that'll be nice.
All right, let's talk about the coach. Jeff Blashill returns. What's the realistic best case scenario here? Because unfortunately, we still have no evidence to support any faith in this coach. In my mind, is the best case scenario last year's Sharks, where they were fun? Is basically the best way that we could describe it. Like, do we see that as a potential scenario here?
Not with Jeff Blashill, unfortunately, right? Like the coach in San Jose said, he's like, you know what? Let's get to biz. Let's just get out there and have some fun. We're going to get scored on a lot, but we're going to score a lot. And like, we've got some really great offensive players and we're going to let the leash out and let's see what they can do. Right. I don't see that happening here. I feel like Jeff Blashill is here because, he's a, developmental coach, right? It's kind of his MO. He's here to help these young players kind of acclimate to the league, help develop them into successful NHL players in a completely brutal offensive environment, right? Like, Jeff Blashill is one of these guys to like, it's kind of defensive, right? Like, and also like, Chicago doesn't have, especially with Bedard out now, they don't have a lot of good players that are comfortable holding on to the puck, all that. And like they're young. So there's lots of giveaways. There's, a lot of mistakes. So all that to say, I think that Blashill is here to be a kind sort of coach while they're kind of going through these growing pains. And then once they do get to a level, like, get the hell out of our sight, Jeff Blashill. All right. You're not here anymore. We need a guy in here that actually knows how to run an offense and get the most out of his top players. And I just don't see that happening here this year.
Yeah, it is unfortunate, but we have to be realistic about what we can expect there. Obviously, Bedard and the caliber of player that he is exceeded that situation last year, but it's going to be hard for a lot of lesser caliber of players to really have their best version of their season under this coach, in our estimation. Let's talk about the power play. Bedard, new acquisition Patrick Kane, Tyler Bertuzzi, 200% locks for the top power play when healthy, in my estimation. I do think we have an interesting case brewing for that forward power play spots. Frank Nazar, Anton Frondell, who will likely play all year with the Blackhawks. And you could throw Teuvo Teravainen in there. Teravainen is a very effective power play player, was a big piece of that power play that was so good the year prior, and then last year was not as big a piece of the power play, and the power play was much worse. So maybe they go back to that. I don't see that happening. But what's your estimation on what this power play looks like? I mean, do they go 5 forward power play?
I'm not there with the 5 forward power play. I can't say that they won't, because other teams have done it and
they tried it.
Yeah, lukewarm results, right? Yeah, and Chicago has tried it. So I just don't think you bring a guy like Byram in here and pay him that kind of money to be like, no, we're going to try this 5 forward power play. Let's get Anton Frondell out there. It's like, no, get Byram out here. That's why he signed. Like, there must have been conversations before he signed his huge contract to be like, what is my role here? Because I want to be the guy. I'm like, you're the guy. So being the guy equals power play 1 with a bullet. So I'm not seeing that, but Bertuzzi for sure. This guy's he's really an underrated part of that power play, when it was good. And, even last year, I still think he's one of the more dangerous guys on that power play. It will be interesting to see what happens with Bedard out. I think Nazar is the guy that jumps up there and plays top power play. Then it, yeah. But I mean, we know Kane is there, Bedard, Bertuzzi. I think it's going to be Nazar. I know Frondell got that audition towards the end of the season. Do you think that goes into next season, Nate? Like, is that sort of the way you're projecting it?
I mean, I don't know exactly what to do here. The addition of Kane has made it a lot less straightforward for me
Mm-hmm.
because you don't acquire Patrick Kane, especially at 8 million, to not put him on the top power play. And previously, where I was actually pretty excited about it being, it was going to be Bertuzzi, Bedard, Nazar, and Frondell in my estimation. Now I'm having to pick and choose between Nazar and Frondell a little bit more,
Yep.
and that's less exciting. I do agree that Byram is going to be the top power play guy. I don't think you can realistically pay a guy 12.5 million for the next 4 years and not at least start with him being the top power play guy. If it goes horrifically wrong, which is entirely possible, then maybe you revisit it at a future point. But I think that is almost a foregone conclusion for me as well. But overall, I think, I mean, I want it to be Frondell. I think the guy's got a shot that can make a difference on the
Mm-hmm.
power play, especially with Bedard off in the early going. I would love to see that happen. Let Kane distribute. Let Bertuzzi get to the front of the net and make those dirty plays, which he's actually quite good at. That is like the maybe single area of his game that is actually quite good. But yeah, I think that's how I'm kind of envisioning it. But when Bedard is back, that's when the rubber really is going to meet the road for me when it comes to what these roles are going to look like. Because I think that also takes away puck touches from Patrick Kane. That's going to be a little bit more interesting. That being said, like Patrick Kane coexisted alongside Lucas Raymond on that power play for Detroit the last few years, and that was very effective. So it's not that it can't work. I just think it's going to be very different looks with and without Bedard. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit up in the air for sure, and just another ripple effect of the Bedard injury. All right, let's dig in on the the
That's it.
projections. I guess so. Connor Bedard's, I projected him for 64 games. You had him for 70, so I prorated your projections to the 64 just so that we would have something comparable to
How
look
dare
at
you?
here. And obviously, mine are going to be much closer to being correct.
Okay.
64 games played, 29 goals, 42 assists, and 71 points for me. 26 goals, 42 assists, 67 points for you with the round down there. So pretty tight, all told. Nothing too crazy there in terms of projection. I'm not sure, honestly, about the fit with Patrick Kane potentially here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that is a question because I do think that you acquire Patrick Kane to like put him there with Bedard, and you have like the old guard Chicago, the new guard Chicago. Like all the narratives are there. Like, this is why Patrick Kane is here. I'm sure that's one of the reasons Patrick Kane wanted to come, and one of the assurances that had to be made to Patrick Kane to get him to come and play out the last few years of his career in a situation where he has no chance at a Stanley Cup is that he's going to get a chance to play at even strength with Connor Bedard. So all that to say, I don't know what that looks like because I think that both of these guys are on puck players. I think it looks great for Tyler Bertuzzi, who's going to just put his head down and skate to the front of the net and have them bounce pucks off his butt. But I think that for Bedard and Kane, it could work very well, and you could see two highly talented players get to biz on the regular. Or it could be a bit of a situation where they both want the puck in the same situation and they don't actually mesh that well. So all that to say, I think Bedard will be fine. I think he is the future, and if it push comes to shove, he will get his way more than Patrick Kane will get his. But I do think that's an interesting dynamic now with
Yeah.
the Kane acquisition.
Yep. No, absolutely. I mean, I like what you said about both being on puck players, but I mean, I think Kane understands the assignment, right? Like, Bedard is the on puck player. You get in where you fit in, right? And at this point in his career, like he's just he can do some of what Bedard does as well, like zone entries leading to chances. Kane is really good at that. He has no speed at this point, but it doesn't matter. He's really crafty. He can get in and do that. And his high danger passes per 60 last year, off the charts. Right. It was awesome. Like, we saw an amazing season from Alex DeBrincat. I think Patrick Kane was a big factor there for that happening. And I think the interesting thing about Bedard is whether he's playing center or wing. Obviously, he's playing center. Like we both have him projected for center. I think when he plays wing, he's more of the guy at the end of the passes, right? But I think when he's playing center, yeah, there's a little bit more facilitation that happens there, and having a guy like Kane who's inefficient, but like I've projected him for over 20 goals, which is pretty nice. I actually think they will mesh pretty well together because I feel like Kane understands the assignment. That said, too, Connor Bedard, with the injury, I feel like it's very similar to Jarvis. You come back and he just had shoulder surgery. So what does that shot look like? What is Bedard known for? He's known for his wicked release and shot. So I feel like that's going to take a little bit of a hit for, let's say, 10 games while he gets back into it. And we know Bedard as well. He's probably going to come back too early. Right. This guy's a freak physically as well. Right. So he'll probably be on the low end of that there and get back a little bit early. So we'll see how it goes. But I think it's a net positive to get Kane in here. And for Bedard, it's just a shame. It's a shame we can't see full Bedard. Never go full Bedard. Only Bedard does that. All right. But I think we're going to have to wait one more season to see this nuclear Bedard performance that we've been waiting for. I think we're not going to get the Celebrini kind of thing. I think Bedard's a little bit of a tier down there, but getting Patrick Kane helps.
Yeah. Let's talk about Bertuzzi here, who I have for 29 goals, 29 assists, 58 points. You have for 28 goals, 25 assists, 53 points. Like I mentioned, I think this is best case scenario for Tyler Bertuzzi to have another really solid year. Obviously, Bedard being injured at the start is going to limit things somewhat, but Bertuzzi's role feels very assured on this team, and Bertuzzi has always been at his best when he can kind of be the tertiary guy and just be there at the end of the pass, get down on one knee. And I always think of those Connor Garland moments where he would hold the stick like he was like a little tyke player with both hands down by the blade just so that the pass
he is a little
wouldn't
tyke player, isn't he?
And he would get down on one knee by the far corner and just present that. That feels like what Tyler Bertuzzi does on a regular basis. But it was pretty effective last year, and I do think it can be effective again this year. I do think that he's in a better spot relative to most of the other guys on the team where I think he will play with Kane because I think there's some natural synergy in the way those two play, but he does have multiple options now with Nazar and Frondel, even with Bedard out, where he has two outs to good center play, basically, is what I'm seeing there. And even if it's not A+ center play, at least it's passable center play, and he can at least tread water until Bedard is back, and then hopefully really get to biz after the fact.
Yep, I love that. I mean, this is not a play driving forward, right? This is a guy that is going to be reliant on other players to sort of do the work, and then he just gets into position and gets the biz, right? But great season for him. Very efficient season for him. He had 32 goals last year on a 19.5 shooting percentage. I don't think that's happening again, right? I'm not really projecting it that way, but still, I think this is a player that, like you said, is landing in a really good spot. And now we've got Patrick Kane in here to sort of soften the blow of Bedard being out. And I think Nazar will take a step. I'm looking forward to talking about him because I think that's definitely a player of interest for me. With his injuries last year, he never really got right. And then, but he played amazing for a stretch there in the first half of the season. So I'm excited about that. And then Frondel is a guy that I'm excited to watch, and hopefully he can take a step. So like you said, I do believe that he has some outs in terms of, having play driving centers to help him kind of with his floor and production.
Patrick Kane, next up, I have for 19 goals, 43 assists, 62 points. You have for 22 goals, 43 assists, 65 points. I like Kane. I think this is definitively a worse spot for him, at least until Bedard is back. He played with Alex DeBrincat last year, who was, by the underlying metrics, one of the most effective players in the league at even strength last year. Obviously a terrific power play in Detroit there the last number of years as well. Kane was a big part of that. Hopefully he can bring some of that to Chicago, but he will obviously have less talented line mates to work with on that power play, at least until Bedard returns. So I do think that we can expect a little bit of a pullback in the Kane projection here, and that's the way it came out for me here. At the same time, I still think there's a chance that, especially early on, that they really do lean on him as a guy who has to almost be an engine for offense for this team, and he could get a big role very early on that could kind of outweigh a little bit of the lack of efficiency that will almost necessarily be there, and just due to the lack of talent around him.
Yeah, it makes me think of a player like Brad Marchand last year with Florida. Like they don't profile the same, so I'm not saying they're the same kind of player, but Brad Marchand was a third liner in Florida during their cup run. And then, with all the injuries that they had, he became a first liner and he played unbelievably. And not that Kane was ever a third liner, but I feel like, he was a second liner there and would sometimes even get moved off the power play, for like JVR in Detroit, right? They would do that sometimes. Whereas like, yeah, I think he's the go-to guy for Chicago right now with their roster construction, especially with Bedard out. Maybe he sees even more than the kind of 17:45 average time on ice that I've projected him for. Maybe that equals some more points, but yeah, I think he's going to take a slight step back. But because of his role with this team, I think that's going to kind of absorb some of that regression and keep him pretty viable. And he's still like, this guy's all gas in terms of offense. High danger passes. Like he's so slick, right? He's going to put people in really good positions. Tyler Bertuzzi in particular. And then when Bedard comes back, I'm really excited to see that.
Right, let's talk about Frank Nazar. I agree, an interesting player here. 23 goals, 33 assists, 56 points for me. 22 goals, 34 assists, 56 points for you. So we're bang on with the points there. Mm-hmm. I am interested to see if Nazar has another level that he can take his game to, especially if early on he does go up on that Bertuzzi Kane line and he's the guy getting, 16 minutes even strength time on ice, plus the top power play, plus some penalty kill. Like, is he a 21 minute per night guy while Bedard is out? I think that's a realistically possible outcome for Frank Nazar, and that could be a situation which I could see him, projecting at a 65-point pace early on in the season while Bedard is out. When Bedard comes back, as I mentioned with the power play, it gets a lot harder to really project what that's going to be, because I do think Frondel has the shot that Nazar doesn't. Not a lot of players do, and that could be a weapon that they look to kind of have on that power play and unleash on that power play. It could be a situation where Nazar stays on top power play all year. I just think there's a little bit unsettled in that projection, and I think that's probably reflected in both of our projections here.
Yeah, it's pretty much the whole team, right? Like what does it look like with Bedard, without Bedard? But I do feel like what I saw last year from Frank Nazar in a certain stretch there was like, he had 14 points in his first 18 games, finished with 14 in his last 20 games. So this, and that's on a really putrid Chicago team, brutal offense, expected goals, 4/60, terrible, right? They're not generating a damn thing, but Nazar was getting to biz with his points. So I do feel like this is a player that was sort of ravaged by injury last year, and the rest of the team as well. And, he's going to jump into a bigger role. I feel like he's going to get the spot over Frondel at this point. That would surprise me if Frondel gets deployment over Nazar in sort of the pecking order of the centers there. That said, too, Nazar can play the left side. Frondel can play wing as well. So maybe they do something like that. But I think Nazar is going to be sort of the linchpin to what happens with Chicago here while Bedard is out. And I'm excited to see. I think Kane will be with Nazar as well. Like, I think Nazar is going to be that 1C with Bertuzzi and Kane. I like that. I don't know, because like you said, Bedard and Kane, maybe that doesn't work as well. But Nazar and Kane, I feel like, yeah, now Kane is the guy maybe kind of at the end of passes. Nazar is that rushing player. He's really good with his zone entries, good at zone exits as well. He's got the puck on his stick a lot and is able to set up plays. So, yeah. I'm interested in Nazar. Like, I think you could do a lot worse with like a last pick in your draft, or even like a second last pick in your draft if it's a deep league. Like, Nazar is a guy that's going to get some opportunity this year.
All right, Teuvo Teravainen, I have for 13 goals, 24 assists, 37 points. You have him for 13 goals, 27 assists, 40 points. I think probably we're witnessing Teravainen just kind of fading into background noise in terms of his NHL career at this point. I do think there's still probably a pretty good power play player in here, but it doesn't look like that's likely to be in the cards for him in terms of a top power play role this year on this team. And so, yeah, it really does come down to what can he do at even strength. He is, definitely more of a distributor at this point in his career, has been efficient in the goal scoring department in years past, but I think that part of his game has declined faster than the rest of it. And so it does leave me thinking that he might be a bit of an awkward fit with some of these players. I do think there's a potential fit with Frondell as the shooter if they decide to place him on a line there. But even the best case scenarios for Teuvo Teravainen look like 45 points, I feel like, not even 50 plus.
Yep. I don't have too much to add there. I think we're looking at Teravainen if he can secure some power play time because he's an excellent power play performer. He's also really good on the penalty kill. And Chicago had it. That was their best thing last year. They were great on the penalty kill. Shout out to you, Toivo. Excellent work. But yeah, this is a guy, he's not old by any means. So I don't think he's fading into the darkness or something, but his skill set on this team with the young players coming up, I just don't see why they would all of a sudden go out and prioritize Teuvo Teravainen when you could get some of these other young players up in there that already have sort of a buffer with good vets on those lines. So yeah, all that to say, I got him for 40 points. Like, yeah, that might be high. I got him for 16 power play points, just over 17 minutes average time on ice. I think that's probably closer to a ceiling than it is, what might actually happen.
Right. Let's talk about the young guys then. Roman Kantserov, I have for 20 goals, 21 assists, and 41 points. You have for 19 goals, 24 assists, 43 points. Mm-hmm. I think this is an interesting player, widely described as a high-octane offensive type, undersized at 5'9", and 175 pounds, but definitely a guy that you could see blending into a top six role on a young and upcoming team like Chicago and finding some success early on in a best case scenario. I do think, for my estimation, I think we're closer to that best case scenario with this 41 to 43 point projection than we are the worst case scenario, as it is with most, obviously with most rookies coming into the league for the first time. But what's your take on Kantserov? Do you have excitement for him to potentially be more than just a guy who gets into the top six consistently?
I did. I certainly did, based on what I was hearing from, the Chicago Blackhawks brass and the coach there. But then they went out and signed Patrick Kane. So, that I think that really nukes a lot of the excitement that I had for Kantserov. And not to mention too, like we've heard other players coming over from the KHL that have had these amazing years that have come here and really done nothing, right? Like, and I'm not saying it's their fault, but like, Max Chabanov is one, Siplikov is another one, both with New York there at the time. Like, even Kuzmenko coming over, like it didn't really, he had one good year and then it kind of fizzled out. So I don't know. Like, I feel I like that they said all the right things about Kantserov, and you like to see the proof of concept. This guy went off in a bunch of goals in a men's league, the KHL. It's a very good league. But yeah, I don't see him on line one anymore. I see him line two, and I don't see him getting power play one. I see him getting power play two at this point. So those are two things that I changed after Kane was signed here. And I think, that's really gonna, like you said, I think we're closer to ceiling here. I could see him getting 30 points. I could see him being healthy scratch throughout the year because of his defensive play, all this stuff. So yeah, I'm not really comfortable going ceiling with this player, with this team.
Fair enough. Let's go to Anton Frondell. I have for 26 goals, 23 assists, 49 points. You have him for 24 goals, 27 assists, and 51 points. So obviously we are seeing a bit more of that potential upside with this player here. I mean, he came up for 12 games last year, scores 9 points. So obviously a nice little start to his NHL career there. And even before that, scoring goals in the SHL, a notoriously tough league to score goals in. Definitely more of the shooter type, which is a bit of a difference on this team. Like, Bertuzzi is a guy at the end of passes, but he's not a shooter. Really, Bedard is the only guy I would characterize as a shooter on this roster. So to add a guy like Frondell, who is a shooter and an effective one at a pretty high level of play himself, I think is an interesting piece here. And I do think there's a chance that is an attribute that they do value in terms of power play time, in terms of getting him more time at even strength as well. And yeah, I could see some situations. Maybe they do decide that he goes up on a scoring line with Bertuzzi and Kane, and Nazar has to, play some tougher minutes, and they kind of decide that's the easier way to work things out with the absence of Bedard early in the season. I could see that as a potential scenario. There are just a few different ways that I see things potentially breaking very well for Frondell, and that has me more excited about him than the other young guys here.
Yep. I just like the shooting profile, right? Like you go watch an Anton Frondell highlight package, and you see him on a power play, bang. This guy's one-timer is ridiculous, right? So, does he get over on the right flank? Maybe Kane goes kind of goal line there. I don't know. I think there's different ways I can talk myself into Anton Frondell on the top power play. And I think like the Chicago Blackhawks power play, I think one of my hot takes last year is I predicted they would be top 10 again because they were top 10 the year before. And I was like, yeah, they'll do it again, right? No, it was terrible. All right, I'm going to take a bath on that one. But I do think like the infusion of Kane here. Now you got Frondell, who, like I just said, is an amazing shooter. They got to find some way to make that work. And I think, like you said, there's some outs there. I'd love it if he got 1C there with Bedard out. I don't think it really hurts Nazar that much, but it really, really helps Frondell. So we'll see how ready he is. This is still a really young guy. I don't like to bank on things like that for fantasy. Like it's too risky for me, but the profile is there. Individual shot and chance generation are there. And if he's playing with a guy like Patrick Kane, I think the goals could be there too, the efficiency.
All right, Nick Lardis, kind of the last of the three new guys on the block in terms of the prospects. 21 goal, 12 assists, 33-point projection for me. 19 goal, 16 assists, 35-point projection for you. This is another shooter. I don't know that he's necessarily going to be as efficient as Frondell. I don't know that he's got like the high-end potential that I think Frondell has, but definitely a guy who has scored a lot of goals at lower levels. And I think could fit in as kind of that goal scoring middle six winger that every team does kind of need to give that extra bit of offense, that secondary offense. So I think there is a good case for Nick Lardis to be an effective player, but definitely a guy that I'm viewing more as, even in a best case, a streamer level player this year.
Yep, he's going to be streamer. I've got Nick Lardis on both my dynasty teams, which is nice because he's going to get a role on this team, I feel, unless he comes into camp and just biffs it completely. But like you said, he's a shooter. At this point in his career, I'm not seeing kind of the play driving metrics that I would like to see. So yeah, I'm scared off a little bit even more, right? Like obviously we're looking at him as a streamer, especially if he gets moved up the lineup. I've got him projected for the third line right now. He's going to need someone to kind of do that, zone entry work and get him the puck in good positions. But if they do, this is a guy that can put the biscuit in the basket.
All right, you did a projection for Ryan Donato, 19 goals, 17 assists, 36 points, and Alex Vlasic, 3 goals, 19 assists for 22 points. Do you think that we'll be looking at either of these players for fantasy this year?
Maybe Donato, right? But last year is not a good indication that we will, right? But I feel like they got to get something out of this player. They like, or move him, right? This is still a guy that he had a 62-point season on a team, just a year ago, and that team wasn't that much better than this one we're looking at here. So I'm not sure where the disconnect happened with Ryan Donato. I feel like there's still some offensive juice with this player. But yeah, I mean, I projected him for 36 points with 4 power play points. So it's not like I'm going crazy here. It's just ice time. And I feel like there's a runway for him to get some ice time. But other than that, this is a guy that I could see him just as easily being benched and then, bought out or moved to another team.
All right, Bowen Byram, the belle of the ball this offseason for Chicago. 13 goal, 35 assists, 48-point projection for me. 13 goal, 34 assists, 47-point projection for you. I like the opportunity for Byram. I have liked Byram as a very efficient player in the past, but he has failed to take the next step at every opportunity for me personally, and just kind of elevate himself to where like the even strength numbers could not be ignored. And you're like, yeah, as soon as this guy gets a real number one role, full power play, all that, then it's going to really be a pop off. I've not seen enough to date from Bowen Byram to suggest that that's an inevitability. I think it's still a possibility, but I definitely think there's some stuff that gives me qualms about his ability to just step into a power play one role and be an elite power play quarterback from the get-go. I think if that was there, we probably would have seen it by now. As a result, this 48 points only includes 17 power play points for me.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, this is it's fun. It's fun for fantasy. You don't see it very often. A guy to go like a guy that we have talked about in the past is like, yeah, there's some underlying numbers here we really like. We've had Bowen Byram on our sleeper list before. You know, it was a couple years ago, but yeah, now he's walking like literally going from like, you know, a second pairing defenseman, power play 2 to now like he could play 25 minutes next year, you know, like he could do everything for this team. And that's kind of exciting, right? Because we are looking at a guy that was drafted 4th overall. He's got offensive acumen. We know that. He's an efficient shooter, which you mentioned, and he's a good rusher as well. But damn, I mean, that's a lot of money to pay for an unproven guy. Like they're paying him money for like a top guy when he's never, ever shown that. And I will push back a little bit on like, the reason he's never shown that is because he's always been blocked. He's been blocked in all of the places that he's been at. And yeah, maybe that's an excuse. Like he's had opportunities here and there, but mentally knowing like, hey, you're our guy. We drafted you 4th overall. You're our guy. Get out there and get the biz. Like that's what he's going to get this year. So we'll see. I think, you know, I look at Elias Pettersson here in Vancouver signing for $11 million and putting up, you know, 60-point seasons, 55-point seasons, and people are pissed. They're like, what the hell is this crap, you know? And I could see that happening for Bowen Byram as soon as next year when he puts like a 35 to 40 point season out there, right? With like you said, 12 power play points. So that all said, really fun pickup here. I like what Chicago's doing, even throwing $8 million at Patrick Kane. They have the cap space. They're staying lean. Like these aren't, you know, at least with the Kane thing, that's not a long-term deal. It's only 2 years. And they're taking a risk with Byram here. And I like it. They had the money and they went for it.
Yeah, I will say with all that being said, and I have to say as well, like he's not a guy with big peripherals either. Like he's not a
No.
big time shooter, not a big time hitter. The blocks are good, not great, I would say. So all that to say, I do think there is still a scenario in which that power play legitimately is great with Kane and Bedard, especially when both of those are healthy and getting to biz. If we get kind of more towards the best case scenarios for guys like Frondell, like Kanserov, I do think there are some scenarios for this Chicago team where they're at least a little bit more fun. They do have a little bit more offense than we've seen in years past, and there are some avenues to Bo Byram hitting like a 55, maybe even touching or approximating a 60-point
60.
season
God.
in a best case scenario. But that would be like everything breaking right, 95th percentile kind of outcome. So yeah, I don't hate the shot where you're going to have to take him probably like 9th round kind of thing in your leagues. I don't hate that shot, but I do think there could be a lot of pain and potential there as well. And so it's not one that I'm excited to make, but if you do get to that kind of place and you're looking for a guy with some upside, I do think he is still of that profile. Artyom Levshunov obviously was the primary power play quarterback last year. Does not project to be that this year with the incoming Byram. 4 goals, 21 assists, 25 points for me. 6 goals, 25 assists, 31 points for you. This is actually the player with the biggest difference between the two of us. You are 6.5 points higher on him than I am. Yeah, I think the most likely scenario is that it's another year for him where he doesn't get put in a lot of offensive situations, where he plays closer to 3rd pair minutes than 2nd pair minutes. And that's kind of the way I've projected it. I would love to see him take a step. I think the bones of a very interesting player are there. I think he's got a lot of physical tools. But to your point earlier about like what Carolina has prioritized, they have not just taken guys with a lot of tools, they've taken guys that fit, and that has worked. And Levshunov feels like a toolsy guy with a lot of things that could go right. And are we really going to be confident in a guy like Jeff Blashill to bring the best out of him? I am not. So I do think that in the right scenario, Levshunov could have a lot of potential. But with Byram here, I just feel like that took away all the ceiling and it took a lot of the steam out of the potential of Levshunov. And now you're not only betting on him to take a step personally, you're also having to somehow navigate a scenario in which he can get some top power play time to be anything approximating fantasy relevant this season.
Yep. I feel like, to add on to that, because I agree with all that, but I also think maybe the addition of Byram takes a little bit of pressure off of guys like Rinzel and Levshunov, where that's why they went to a 5-forward power play, because like I don't know what to do with this. This guy's 19, or 20 or whatever it is, and we're expecting him to run an NHL level power play, and he just wasn't quite there. And remember, in the season they were like, okay, we're taking Levshunov out of here. Let's get him with a shooting coach. We're going to show him how to shoot again. We're going to show him how to pass. Whatever they were doing there, the development coach with Levshunov. But this guy's a blue chipper for sure, and that's not going to be cashed here this next season. But I do think, he paced for 29 points last year. I've got him for 31 here this year. I think that's reasonable. I think that he takes a minor step, and maybe with a little bit less pressure, because there's a true, quote unquote, number one defenseman here in Bo Byram.
Sounds good to me. Sam Rinzel, I did do a quick projection for as well. 7 goals, 16 assists, 23 points, playing most likely a third pair role here as well. Mostly including Rinzel, to remind everyone of last year, where everyone was 100% convinced that Rinzel was going to be the top power play quarterback for Chicago all year because of the 9 games he played for them at the end of the previous season, and had 5 assists, and that was enough to get everybody super hyped about him. Just a reminder that 9-game sample sizes do not a player make.
That's wiener behavior, Nathan. All right, damn it. Who started on power play 1, by the way? I want to go. Let's just talk about that.
He did start there, but it turns out that a 9-game sample size isn't enough to project a player for a full season. So that's what happened.
Damn it.
All right, Blake, top 3 targets. Give it to me.
Oh, yeah. I'm giving it to you, buddy. No problem. Patty Kane, number 1. I like the value in ADP, and he's still got juice, right? This is a distinguished gentleman who I think is all offense, and that's all we care about for fantasy. So I'm happy there. And then when Bedard comes back, I think there's a good chance that they will gel. Nazar is my second. I just think the increase in opportunity with Bedard out, I like that, and power play 1. And then Bo Byram, I've got as my third. For just like you said, it's a swing. It's hard. The ceiling for Bo Byram, yeah. When you said 60, I'm like, I don't even know. I don't know I can get there. Ceiling to me might be 52 points. And I'd be like, yeah, but there's always a chance, right? But like you said, 95th percentile, but I think the cost of acquisition is not that crazy for Bo Byram. You're still getting a power play 1 defenseman late, and that's something we, covet here with Apples Ginos. So I'm taking Bo Byram.
All right, for myself, Anton Frundell, number 1. I just think the ceiling scenario for Anton Frundell is legitimately difference-making in fantasy, and I don't know that you can say that about basically anybody else on this roster. So that's it for me. Frank Nazar, I also think, has a chance to be, more of a 65 to best case scenario 70-point player if he takes another step in his offensive creation numbers. So that's another player I'm interested in. Patrick Kane, like I said, if he gets a huge role on this team, he could kind of brute force his way into some pretty fantasy relevant numbers, and you're not going to have to give up a lot to acquire him. All right, we've reached the halfway point. We've got to talk about the APL for a moment. applesandginos.com/APL for more info. This is the Apples and Ginos Patron League. Over 200 fantasy managers last year in this league, and we had a great time giving, our first run at a tiered fantasy league. Blake and I ran in Tier 1, and we got soundly beaten by the best of the best in that league. So we're licking our chops going down to Tier 2 this year, but we'll be back. That's a promise, not a request. So I think that this year it's going to be even better. We have done a lot of work behind the scenes with some new people to add a bunch of features. There's going to be mini games in season that you're going to be able to play if you're a member. So go check it out at applesandginos.com/APL. All right, Blake, you ready for the last 2 teams?
Let's do it. This guy jacks you up. Oh my God, I'm slightly aroused, and as I usually am. But it's helping a lot. Thank you, Nathan.
All right, let's dig into Colorado here. Key departures here. I mean, number one is obviously Ross Colton, who I've had a long professed love affair with on this podcast. Jack Drury, and in an act of utter triskaidekaphobia, Valeri Nichushkin has left the Colorado Avalanche as well. Key arrivals, Nazem Kadri arrives at the deadline. Jaden Schwartz is a notable pickup this offseason. Nikolaj Ehlers comes over from the Leafs at the deadline. Blake favorite Fedor Svechkov comes over along with Zachary Leroux, and the Colton trade with the Nashville Predators. Biggest takeaways from the departures and arrivals here, Blake?
Yeah, I mean, they had to move some cap out. They got some big contracts coming up that they need to sign. I think Colton had a down year and sort of played himself out of there. I really hope that he gets finally. You know, we had 10 games of Ross Colton, didn't we, Nathan? And it was amazing. It was freaking glorious. So maybe with Nashville, he'll get, a boost in ice time, maybe power play 2. Here's hoping. But Nichushkin as well is a big loss. I think they were able to, obviously they had an amazing year, and Nichushkin had kind of a muted year. So I think he became expendable at that point. And I like his move to Columbus, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah, Kadri was a great pickup at the end. Jaden Schwartz is very interesting. And Svechkov. Oh, yeah. We got our new 4C here in Colorado, and I'm loving it, folks.
All right, let's talk about the coach. Jared Bednar returns for his 11th season in Colorado. Mm-hmm. I would characterize Jared Bednar as a good coach IRL. Like, I'd probably put him maybe top 10, definitely top 15 amongst NHL coaches in the league. I don't think I would put him top 5. I think there are some people who might get him in there, but I don't know that I've ever seen a Bednar coached playoff series and thought that he outcoached the other team necessarily. I think he's just had tremendous players, and that's been more of his success than his individual coaching. So I think he's a good coach, not necessarily a great coach, but he is a great coach for fantasy. He gives his top players all the minutes, all the time, and that is what we need and love for fantasy. I think one of the more interesting questions for Jared Bednar this year is, what is he going to do with all of these left-handed wingers? As I was going through this, trying to figure out who is going to play right wing on this team, I legitimately couldn't. I was just struggling very hard. They have just a whole bunch of guys. They go out and add Jaden Schwartz, who's another left-handed left winger, to a group that includes Landeskog, Lehkonen, Kadri, and Nelson there as well, both centers who might play some wing, but both are left-handed shots as well. Like, it's just kind of crazy that everybody's a left-handed shot, and I think that does it might actually have some very real implications for who plays where and who plays in the top 6 and who plays in the bottom 6.
Yep. I like what you said about Bednar being a great coach for fantasy because that's all that matters. This guy is trotting guys out, the most amazing players for 20 plus minutes. I remember when Natchez came over, that was unbelievable, right? And that's what we hoped would happen. And that's what did happen. And this guy just went bonkers for a 100-point season. But yeah, you know what this situation reminds me of? A little bit of like Rod Brind'Amour last year. Like, okay, you've been doing status quo and you've been having regular season success, right? But what the hell happened in the playoffs here? And I think there's some factors that happened when they got swept by Vegas. Like Mac was playing injured, Makar was playing injured, right? Nichushkin was out, goaltending was horrific, and they ran into like a blistering hot Carter Hart, who after they won that series, the guy just proceeded to quietly become one of the worst goalies I've ever seen in my life. But that's I'm wondering what adjustments are going to be made. And I really do think that it's going to start with the power play. Colorado has to figure out that power play next season, don't they?
They absolutely do. That power play, obviously McKinnon, Makar, Natchez are the locks. Landeskog and Kadri were on the top power play unit in the playoffs, but I don't think that that's locked in stone by any stretch. Brock Nelson had a good run there. Mm-hmm. There was a stretch, I think it was in January, February, where Brock Nelson felt like he was scoring a goal every game, and some of that was on the top power play. Artturi Lehkonen has been on the top power play in the past, but his power play share has really decreased in the last couple couple of years there. So seems like he might be falling out of favor just a little bit. And obviously he's very valuable to the team in other facets. So that could be part of it as well. We talked about this, Blake, on the top 10 shocking statistics podcast that we did a couple weeks ago. But really the question for this power play is, how do they become less stagnant? How do they generate just more and better looks? Because it did really feel at times last year like they really only had the play that was called get it to McKinnon, get it to Makar, and hope that they're able to world class their way into a goal.
That was a really fun conversation, and it's a head scratcher, right? But when you dig in a little bit more, like, yeah, some things become clear, and I'm glad you brought that up. Like, Mac he became he is just a chucker on the power play, and it just seemed to me throughout the season, like, yeah, they get it to Mac and he's just kind of waiting out the goalie, like just chucking pucks at the net instead of getting the goalie moving east-west, right? And to do, like, they had Nichushkin down on the goal line. So to do that, we got to get either Nichushkin over to the right flank. Maybe you put Kadri in the bumper spot. You got Landeskog here, who I think will be power play one as that net front guy. He's amazing at that. I think you could put either Kadri or Nichushkin over on the right flank there, just to give a passing threat. You know what I mean? Although, yeah, like you said, a lot of left-handers. So Kadri's left-handed. If he's over on the right flank, is he the shooter now? Like, that's not really what you want. So I kind of see it as Nichushkin maybe going over there. You have Kadri in the bumper. And I think what they're going to do, and I looked this up a little bit more as well, is like they've talked about being more, like, there needs to be more motion here. They became very stagnant on the power play, which is so strange for such like a high tier of players and creative players. They just were not creative on the power play for whatever reason. And that obviously needs to change, because that was a big factor in the playoffs too. Like, they just couldn't get going, couldn't capitalize when the other team took penalties. And that was really their downfall.
Don't have much to add there. Let's talk about the different players in their projections. Obviously, Nathan MacKinnon off the rip, 45 goal, 84 assist, 129 point projection for me, 50 goal, 74 assist, 125 point projection for you. I don't know that we need to say too much about Nathan MacKinnon, but as of this point, Blake, between him and Connor McDavid, who are you leaning at first overall for your drafts this year?
I mean, last year I just sort of relied on schedule, right? What's going to be the best schedule? But I think Mac is the right answer. I've heard a lot, and we're going to talk about Edmonton, next pod, but Babcock's talking about dropping McDavid's ice time and Leon Draisaitl's ice time. Bednar's not talking about dropping Mac's ice time. So I think at this point, I still got to go with MacKinnon as the number one. I've got him projected for 50 goals. He's playing with Nichushkin, who is an absolute freak out there. One of the only players in the league that can actually keep up with Nathan MacKinnon and play at the same speed as him. And they play on the same line. That's ridiculous. So I'm really big on Mac right now. I also, because that power play was so bad, I think they figure it out. And I've projected Mac for even more power play points than last year.
Agree with both those things. I have Gabriel Landeskog as the first left winger on the Avalanche here, playing on that top line. I would just say don't read too much into that. This is a spot where Bednar has routinely cycled players in and out over the last half of a decade on the left wing for MacKinnon, and so this is the way I wrote it out, but I am not married to this by any stretch. We've seen Landeskog here, we've seen Lehkonen here, we've seen Kadri here, we've seen a lot of different looks for this left wing one spot, so don't read too much into that. I didn't project it as if Landeskog was locked in on this top line all year long by any stretch. I have him for 24 goals, 36 assists, running down to 59 points. You have him for 24 goals, 34 assists, running up to 59 points. So definitely pretty close on Landeskog here. I do think it's going to take some more power play points for him to exceed this. This only was 10 power play points for me in my projection to get him to this 59 points. So I definitely think there's a scenario in which more of a role on a power play, a better power play, him actually getting a piece of more pucks moving past him as he stands in front of the net could result in an even better year for Landeskog. So I do think there's some potential upside from this number for him, especially if he gets on the power play, gets more utilization there, more a piece of the play there, and also if he's able to remain on MacKinnon's wing more often than not.
I love Gabe Landeskog. This guy is such an inspiration. He's a great captain of this team, and I want him to do really well. And I think you have to look at last season as a success. Like coming back from the injuries that he suffered, all that time off, like 4 years, he didn't play, right? And then to come back and, pace for 48 points, like 14 goals in 60 games, that's fine. I think, they sort of eased him in all season, right? Like that's just kind of the way it was. But I mean, come playoff time, he's played over 19 minutes, which is really nice. 82% power play share in the playoffs, 5 power play points. Like, yeah, I think he's back. I feel like I'm excited about what he's able to do next year. And I think he's going to have a better year. That said, too, I think Lehkonen is going to be the top line left winger. I think there's some familiarity there. They were such a wagon at 5-on-5 last year. Lehkonen played the most minutes with Mac and Necas. I don't see why they would change that at this point. Like they had such success, and Landeskog had a decent amount of success on that second line. So that's sort of how I'm seeing it. But I agree with what you said. Like, let's wait and see, right? Because they could do a lot of different things there. So we'll see. But I like Lehkonen there. That said, I've got Landeskog for 12 power play points. So I think that's nice. Still only 16 and a half minutes. I think that's kind of his wheelhouse. I don't think they want to burn him out. They want to keep him ready for the playoffs there. Fun player. Like I 50, I've got him for 58.6. Like I could see 60, 65, especially if he goes up to the top line there. And again, that's a guy you might be able to get with like one of your last picks, right? And no one's racing to in their drafts to pick up Gabe Landeskog, but I think he's going to get a little bit more opportunity, and I think he's in a better position physically than he was last year.
Agreed there. Martin Necas, next up, I have for 35 goals, 70 assists, 105 points. You have for 36 goals, 65 assists, and 101 points. So definitely big projections for both of us, not viewing last year as much of a fluke. And I think most of this for me is really just banking on that power play, kind of figuring it out a little bit more. And if that happens while maintaining a good chunk of what they were able to accomplish at 5-on-5, I think Necas hits 100 points again.
Yeah, I think that's really it. And we can look at a lot of the Colorado players that were on that top power play and be like, yeah, even if they regress at 5-on-5 a little bit, which is they probably will, they were the best in the league in so many metrics at 5-on-5. So that's probably going to regress, but that power play was putrid. So I don't even think it'll come up to mid. I think they'll really figure it out and probably roster a top 10 power play with the people they have on that power play. It should be top 10. There's no question. And Necas is a big driving factor. So we'll see how they line up, but that's your homework out there, folks. Like in training camp, watch how they line up and remember these conversations that we had, right? And remember kind of what the issue was. I really do think it was just Mac chucking the puck when there's no need for him to do that. Like, let's get the goalie moving. Let's get some of these playmaking forwards in there getting the biz. But yeah, Necas for 100 points. I love it. This gives me a lot of joy, Nathan. Oh my God. Gives me a lot of joy. Martin Necas. 24 power play points after 37 the year previous. So this is a primetime power play performer that just underperformed last year.
Brock Nelson, my C2 in my projections here, I have for 33 goals, 31 assists, 64 points. You have him for 29 goals, 32 assists, 61 points. So I've gone for a few more goals here. I do think that Nelson remains one of the more efficient shooters in the league, both at even strength and on the power play when he gets there. So a fair portion of this does matter if he gets at least some looks on the power play one throughout the year. And I do think there will be times throughout the year where it will feel bad to be rostering Brock Nelson, more than likely. But I do think you look up at the end of the year and he's gone for 30 goals and 60 points and you feel pretty good about having him.
Hell yeah. This man's grumpy as hell. There's no question there, but he's still a good person. And, he had a great performance kind of mid-season there on the power play. He ended up with 10 power play goals. And we talked about this again last, that 10 shocking statistics pod. One of the only plays that was working for the Avalanche power play was like funneling it to Nelson in the bumper spot. So I think that's why I have him down goals wise. Like I've got him for, 4 to 5 goals less than you. I think it's because he comes off the top power play just to make a tweak there. So we're looking at more movement as opposed to kind of a stagnant, just Brock Nelson firing from the bumper there. But great player. Again, just a really nice piece here for Colorado. One of the reasons, another reason why they were so dominant at 5-on-5. This guy, he's a jack of all trades. I'm a big fan of Brock Nelson, and that's taken me a few years to say. But he does a lot of things really, really well, and this is a great spot for him. I do think the goals come down a little bit, though.
All right, Nazem Kadri, I have as the left wing on the second line. Obviously, a center for most of his career, but they could move him around in a lot of different spots on this Avalanche roster. I have him for 22 goals, 40 assists, 62 points. You have him for 28 goals, 40 assists, 68 points there with the round down. This is the player that we have the biggest difference on. So I have him for 16 power play points. I'm guessing you have him for a little bit more there. But again, Chucker for sure. And a guy that I think is a bit of an awkward fit. I was looking at who he was playing a lot of minutes with. He played a lot of minutes with Nikolaj Ehlers last year when he was with the Avalanche, and I just don't know where the best fit for him is on this team. He is kind of an individualistic player, and he tends to hang on to the puck even when he shouldn't, and that leads to a lot of shots and a lot of high IPP and stuff like that. But I don't know that it's going to be necessarily a terrific fit in the overall Colorado system in this go round. So yeah, a few things kind of contributing there for me with my projection. I'm curious your thoughts, Blake.
Yep. I definitely have him for more power play points. I've got him for 21 power play points. So I'm seeing him as a much higher, like what did I project? 3.5 minutes. So full power play one all year. I'm giving it to Nazem Kadri. So that really is kind of the main factor that's causing the issue there. But I do want to shout out this man's playmaking ability as well, and his ability to generate offense for his teammates, right? I think, we're looking with Calgary, we're looking at a guy who does hold on to the puck too long, who's doing everything himself, because who the hell did he have to pass to? You know what I'm saying? But I've got him playing wing on the second line. I could see him playing wing on the third line. Jaden Schwartz maybe moving up to the second line. I don't know. I could see them doing that. But right now I've got him, Brock Nelson, and Landeskog as the second line. And I feel like that, Nazem Kadri being the left winger on the left, it's going to be facilitation time, right? He's got a hammer in Gabriel Landeskog at the net, your forecheck guy, and he's got, a zone exit guy and a good efficient shooter in Brock Nelson. So I could see Nazem Kadri, I could see the on-ice shooting percentage going up. I've got him for 28 goals as well, which is a big difference. I think a lot of those are on the power play. So that's sort of what I'm seeing there. But I think with this team, he gets in where he fits in, and he doesn't have to do it himself like he did in Calgary.
All right, Artturi Lehkonen I have here as the right wing on the second line. Definitely kind of jack of all trades, Swiss Army knife type player for this team for much of the last few years. I have him for 26 goals, 25 assists, 51 points. You have him for 25 goals, 32 assists, and 57 points. I could definitely see him playing majority of the season as the top line left winger as well. I think there's a lot of different scenarios here. I just think Lehkonen is the most, the guy with the most utility across the lineup, and so that might actually work against him in terms of the offensive output here.
Yeah, where would you see them kind of putting him? Maybe second line or
Yeah, right wing second line is where I have him as the spot that just makes the most sense for everybody else, and
then move Landy over.
Yeah, I feel like that makes the most sense for just everybody else, and he's the guy who could adapt the most easily. So that was my thought process. But like I said, I'm not married to any of this. I think Bednar will constantly be changing it throughout the year.
Yep, that makes sense. I mean, the main thing I think we need to know about Artturi Lehkonen is that he's a supplementary player. He's the guy in the sidecar, all right? He's not driving the main bike. He's on the sidecar. He's got the helmet, right? The propeller, the all the different colors, right? All that stuff. But he's a really good sidecar player. This is a guy that, is going to be a net front guy, doing damage there. He's a good forechecker. So he's that typical kind of supplementary piece that Gabe Velarde, that Zach Hyman is a little bit of Zach Hyman's better, but that kind of player who's doing damage and sort of getting the puck to the stars so they can get the biz, and then knocking in rebounds when he can. So I think his floor is pretty safe. His ceiling is non-existent.
All right, speaking of non-existent ceilings, The rest of the Colorado lineup, I did a projection for Nikolaj Ehlers, came out to 13 goals, 21 assists, 34 points. We both did Jaden Schwartz. I have him for 17 goals, 17 assists, 34 points. You have him for 15 goals, but 25 assists for 40 points. Parker Kelly, who had a great year last year for Colorado, definitely some unsustainable percentages contributing to that, but I have him for 13 goals, 18 assists, 31 points this year.
Nice.
And on brand, Blake, you did a Fedor Svechkov projection, and it came to 8 goals, 16 assists, rounding down to 23 points there. Any of these players that you want to take a stab at here?
The only one that really matters for us for fantasy is Jaden Schwartz. And it's going to be where's he deployed? Like if, we've seen it before, they put Jonathan Drouin up in the 20-minute role. So would they do the same thing with Jaden Schwartz? It's kind of a similar thing, right? And I would take Jaden Schwartz over Jonathan Drouin in that same role, right? I think he has more to offer. He's a little older, but yeah, it's an interesting signing. We just need to see where he plays. So again, Bednar is great for fantasy, and if he identifies something in Jaden Schwartz and wants to get the biz there, we could be looking at a guy that we have to roster at certain points in the year. The other players, no, that's fine. I love Fedor Svechkov, though. I think, man, I'm following the guy's career. I think there's some bits and pieces there, but this is a second team here. He wasn't able to capitalize on a really good season in Nashville. So I'm not really confident that he can do anything here in Colorado besides take up space. But, he's a good egg, that guy.
All right, let's talk about the defense. Devon Taves, I have for 9 goals, 34 assists, rounding down to 42 points. You have him for 8 goals, 31 assists, 39 points. Do you think he's power play too? I know we all want Sam Malinsky to be that guy, but when Makar went out, Sam Malinsky got on top power play. It was reported in practice. Everybody got super excited. It lasted for 1.5 games, and then Devon Taves was back on top power play. So I still think Devon Taves is your better bet as a guy to be the next guy up in case of a Makar injury, to be the second most fantasy relevant Colorado defenseman. Do I think that you necessarily want to go out there and grab him? Probably not. He's more in that Chabot tier. He's more in that K'Andre Miller tier, who we talked about earlier in this episode here. So definitely not a player you're going to get too excited about, but in a best case scenario for him where he's getting power play one time, you could have a stretch where he's doing well for you.
Devon Taves is amazing. Like it's really interesting because obviously when I'm doing my projections, I'm looking in on the microstats on every player. And what I noticed about Devon Taves, his microstats in almost across the board were better, right? We're way better in terms of, offensive generation too. Like he just wasn't getting lucky. Like I would be interested to look at third assists. I bet Devon Taves has like a crap ton of them, right? This is a guy that was definitely facilitating offense, was a big part of why Colorado was so lethal at 5-on-5. He just wasn't getting rewarded with the points. I think he was kind of the odd man out there, but yeah, the numbers were amazing. Entries with chances per 60. This guy was off the hook. He was going off. Rush offense was elite. Chances, shots, shot assists, all that. Oh man, Devon Taves does that. But, yeah, he's the backup for power play for Cale Makar. Should he be, though? I'm not sure about that. Like, I think he is. I agree with everything you said there. But I think, we'll talk about him in a second, but Sam Malinsky really is the better option on the power play. It's just, will Jared Bednar do that? That's my opinion. But all that to say, Devon Taves is a stud. I think it was a down year in terms of what he was able to do offensively, but they did so well. Like, why do they need to change that? Like, I feel like maybe this is more the player that Devon Taves is. I keep saying Devon or Devon. What is it? Is it Devon?
I believe it's Devon.
Devon. Hey, Devon, what you doing? That's cool. All right. He's Devon from this point forward. All right. We watch Colorado Avalanche games. Don't add us, folks. Okay. But yeah, I think, very inefficient season for him. Nothing on the power play, which is normal, but had a great season microstat wise. Team played well. I don't know. Are you drafting Devon Taves? Is this a draftable defenseman?
Confirmed with the 2024-25 NHL pronunciation guide, it is Devon Taves.
Okay.
I personally, I'm kind of just, when I'm in this tier of defensemen, if I'm looking to fill out my last defenseman slot, something like that, I am waiting until the last possible second and grabbing whichever defenseman of that Miller, Chabot, Taves tier is still left on the board.
Yeah, sure.
I'm pretty agnostic as to which one of them it is at that point. So that's really the way that I'm approaching these kind of caliber of players. All right, the big one, Cale Makar, 25 goals, 69 assists, nice 94 point projection for me. 23 goals, 69 assists, also nice. 92 point projection for you. The big question with Cale Makar, similar to McKinnon, is just how high will you draft him? Last year we saw him go at the 5 spot a lot in drafts. I think this year the emergence of Celebrini, you have McKinnon, McDavid, Celebrini, Draisaitl, Kucherov as your top 5 in most cases. Then you have Pasternak, you have Kaprizov, you have Matthews. You can start to make arguments for other players after that as well. But where does Makar fit into that mid-first round for you?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. And that's really the only question. Like, we don't need to talk about how good he is because he's a 90+ point defenseman. So that's not normal, right? This guy can get 30 goals. But yeah, I still like drafting him high, to be honest. Like 5, 6, I'm still there, right? I don't know. Like, it depends on the league I'm in, right? If I feel like, I don't even know. He's still a good pick at 5 in any league. I don't know. Yeah, I like him at 5. Will I draft him there at 5? I'm in 10 leagues, so I'm sure I will. If I got picked 5 in every league, I would have some Cale Makar on my team.
All right. I don't hate it. I think he's very much in conversation. I think I would take Celebrini and Draisaitl ahead of him, so it'd be 6 where that tier starts for me. But him versus Pasternak versus Kaprizov versus Matthews versus whoever else you want to throw into that tier, I think that's a very valid conversation to have. Josh Manson, did a quick projection on him. 5 goals, 23 assists, 28 points for me there. If you are drafting Josh Manson, it's because you're in a Bangers Cats league and you're looking at the 184 hits that I'm projected for with 109 blocks, 132 shots. He does a bit of everything there for you. Sam Malinsky, the last one of interest here. 9 goal, 29 assists, 38 point projection for me. 13 goal, 29 assists, 42 point projection for you, Blake. Some extra gas on that fire for Sam Malinsky for you there for sure. I like Sam Malinsky a lot as well, but give me the bull case for Malinsky. Why could he score in the mid 40s in points this year?
I feel like he jumps up into top 4 minutes this year. That's one thing for sure. Like, he only played 17 minutes, 37 seconds last year, average time on ice. But towards the end of the year, last 21 games, he averaged 19:37. Right. So this is a guy going upwards in his trajectory for ice time. I also think, like, this is a player that does all the things, everything that I like for fantasy, right? We're talking about shot and chance assists out the wazoo. I mean, granted, in sheltered minutes, right? So that's the key here. Those have to translate over to a full workload of minutes with Sam Malinsky. But we saw that towards the end of the year. And I know you mentioned, like, when Cale Makar went down, Malinsky got a little bit of power play 1, then they went back to Taves. That was fine because Malinsky still popped off. Even though Taves was the one on power play 1. I think Malinsky, he had 13 points in the last 21 games. This is a guy, this is not a fair comparison, but he's like a Cale Makar light, right? He has some of those things that Cale Makar does. He sees the ice really well. He connects plays really, really well. I think the team sees it now. Like, there was a quote during the year where Cale Makar was talking about how good Sam Malinsky was. He's like, yeah, you got to watch this guy. Like, I'm surprised every time I'm out there. Like, Cale Makar was saying that about Sam Malinsky, folks. Right. And I think if we didn't see that increase in ice time last year and his ability to put some points on the board, I wouldn't be as excited for Sam Malinsky, but I am, damn it. Like, I'm drafting him. I got him at 42. Like, I mean, it's similar to what I've got Bo Byram for. You know what I mean? I wouldn't draft Sam Malinsky over Bo Byram, but points wise, the projection is similar for me. You know, like, I'm taking the safe power play 1 quarterback 10 times out of 10, but Malinsky has a lot of bits and pieces here. And yes, you're exactly right when you say Devon Taves is the guy that moves up to power play 1 in the, historically. Should he be the one? Like, Devon Taves has had like 3 power play points, 4 power play points. This guy's that's not what he does, right? He's amazing at 5-on-5. I want to see Malinsky on power play 1 if Cale Makar goes down, because I think that's a guy that could put up like 15 power play points, and really kind of cement himself as a fantasy option. So I love Sam Malinsky. Don't at me out there, folks. Get Sam Malinsky in your life. 95 blocks as well. Thank you, Sam. That's really nice. It's a little light, but we'll take that. I've drafted him in a lot of spots in my APL mocks, like with some of my last picks, and that makes me feel really good in the pants.
All right, let's get to your top 3 targets here, Blake.
Give it to me, Neil. I already gave it to you, and I'll do it again. I don't care. All right, just give me 5 minutes. Okay, no, I'm ready. Martin Necas, number 1 with a bullet. Give me Marty Necas all day. I mean, he's steamed up the board, but I think he's absolutely worth it. This is a 100-point player, so I'm very interested in him. Early second round, I think that makes some sense. Nazem Kadri, I gave you my case there. I think he's getting power play 1 all year. And I think he's going to be the facilitation machine on line 2. So I think there's some ceiling there. And then Sam Malinsky is my number 3, just as a dart throw kind of at the end of your drafts that I think has a boom potential, not even a bust potential. I think I don't see his floor dropping out, but I think there's some ceiling there and some runway. Some things are going to have to go right, but I like me some Sam Malinsky.
All right, for myself, Gabe Landeskog is my number 1, 59-point projection with only 10 power play points. If he stays on power play 1 all year, you could see that get up towards 20. Now you're looking at a 69 total point projection, which would obviously be pretty nice. So Gabe Landeskog, number 1 for me. Martin Necas, number 2 for me. Still like in the mid-second in APL mocks, 100-point player. I'm not going to hate on that at the wing position. And then Brock Nelson for me here. I think that I like him on the power play. I don't know that he's going to get the top power play there. I do think there are some scenarios in which that second line could be an even better version this year than it was this past year, and I think Brock Nelson might be the most fantasy relevant player on that second line in that case. So I like Brock Nelson, especially where he's been going in these mocks, like around round 10.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Sometimes you're getting a 30-goal, 60-point profile there. I love it. So Brock Nelson, number 3 for me. Last team, Blake, is the Columbus Blue Jackets. Key departures here, Captain June Benner.
June Benner
is moving on. We are at the 2-hour
How could
mark.
you?
Mason Marchman, Igor Chinnikov, obviously traded in season to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Key arrivals here, Valeri Nichushkin from the aforementioned Colorado Avalanche, and Connor Garland arrives in season as well. Kind of just in and out, obviously players we like here, but it doesn't feel like a definitive change to this roster in any real way for me. Does it feel like a big change to you, Blake?
Well, I mean, I love Boone Jenner, as you know, but yeah, losing your captain, I think that is a big change, right? So we'll see. I guess he didn't like Rick Bonus's postseason speech there, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I mean, losing your captain, a guy of quality of person that Boone Jenner is, and what he did for this team as well, I think that is they're gonna have to pick up some leadership there. But other than that, yeah, you're absolutely right. I like all the players, but I mean, I need to see how they fit in, and I don't think any of them are a player that was like a kind of a part of the identity of the team. I think they can kind of create their new identity and create their own line chemistry there. But I do like Valeri Nichushkin. I think that's a really nice piece there. Kind of, if he stays healthy, I think there's it's a great pickup from Colorado, because that's a guy we've seen dominate at times out there. Granted, playing with McKinnon and players of the like, but I still think there's some juice there with Nuke.
Right. Let's talk about this coaching. Rick Bonus returns after what I would characterize as an all-time anti-players rant at the end of last season. Just pretty much exactly what you mentioned. Absolutely mordant final diatribe, seemingly going after everybody on the team. I mean, how often does this situation play out well for anyone, right? You go and bring back the old coach, Don Waddell and company, basically everybody making decisions for the Blue Jackets for the last number of years. They just seem completely resigned to this antiquated bourgeois ethos that just keeps resulting in the same boring coaches, the same boring results. Don't forget, like, the Pascal Vincent era. Somebody thought that was a good idea. Post Mike Babcock, they wouldn't even and do like a real coaching search. And like, I don't know, there had to be some college coach that they could have made an offer to who would actually have had some new ideas and brought some life to this team. But instead, they're just retread after retread. We get a little bit of a a little bounce, I guess you could call it, with Dean Evison there. It seems like there's some life. The new players, the up and comers, are making a difference. You get the Marchenko breakout, you get Fantilli coming onto the team, and they just haven't been able to punch past that next layer. And I just remain completely unconvinced that Bonus is going to be the guy that brings them to the next level.
I know, buddy. Oh God. Like how do you do that? Like, the only one that came out of this well is Bonus, right? He got signed after that. But I don't know. I read some reports that some players on the Columbus actually wanted Bonus to come back after that. Some of them agreed with what he said, and Werenski took issue with it, but he also didn't deny it. You know what I mean? So it's just, I'm surprised he was hired back after that. Like his lip was quivering in the press conference. It's like, guy, like, just take a chill, man. But anyway, all that to say, I think when Evison was here in Colorado, we saw a more freewheeling offense, right? But that came at the expense of transition plays, chances coming back against the Blue Jackets. And that's what they wanted to avoid, right? So Rick Bowness comes in here, implements a much stricter defensive structure, more accountability, right? They had a lot of success until when it really mattered, right? And then they sort of fell apart. But yeah, I think for fantasy, Bonus being here long-term is not a good thing. I don't think it's a terrible thing, right? We saw Werenski really come to life under Rick Bowness, so I love that, right? But guys like Marchenko, Fantilli, not as much, right? And obviously Kent Johnson, Dmitry Voronkov, who we'll talk about, no, right? They were not favorites of Rick Bowness, and I hate that, for fantasy, I want to see the peacock fly, and that's really not what happened, but whatever. They re-signed him, so hopefully a whole offseason for Rick Bowness to kind of get this roster humming and the systems in place. Maybe there's a little bit more leash so they can give some of these young players.
All right, the power play here: Adam Fantilli, Kirill Marchenko, Zach Werenski, obvious locks for power play one. Charlie Coyle was a mainstay on that top power play, especially in the back half of 2025-26. I assume that you would have those four players on top power play, Blake, all season long. Does it look that way for you?
No, I didn't put Coyle on there as a mainstay, right? I'm sure he'll spend time there, but I had Marchenko, Fantilli, Nichushkin, and I had Kent Johnson making an appearance. Oh, buddy, back in the day, Kent Johnson was a real power play performer, and I I'm joking, but about what I'm saying about Kent Johnson, but I do believe that he'll get back on power play one, and I think that he's a better option there than Charlie Coyle. That's my 2 cents. But Coyle did some fine work there. It's just he's kind of a plug and play guy, whereas Johnson can actually create offense. I don't think Coyle does that. He's kind of just a grunt. He's doing grunt work out there.
All right. I guess that answers the next question about Nichushkin being on power play one. To me, it is a Nichushkin versus Kent Johnson equation in my mind, at least. And I am going to kind of default to Nichushkin as the big acquisition of the offseason. Yep. I have seen no indication that Rick Bowness even knows who Kent Johnson is, and so that is going to be a pretty big problem for me in projecting him for a top power play time. And yeah, you'll see that reflected in my projection when we get there. So let's dig in on the projections here. Adam Fantilli, right off the rip, 32 goal, 36 assists, 68-point projection for me. 31 goal, 37 assists, 68-point projection for you. When Rick Bowness is inevitably fired in the middle of the season, I think Adam Fantilli is going to crush in the back half of the year at a point per game pace, and I'm going to be here for it, having drafted him in the 8th or 9th round of a lot of teams. So that's where I'm at on Fantilli.
Yeah, I mean, it's another year. Like, we're going to see what this contract comes in at, and I think it's going to be a big one. And even Rick Bowness can't deny that. You give this guy 13 mil, 14 mil, 15 mil for Adam Fantilli, which is kind of the going rate for players from that draft class. So, all that to say, I think they have to prioritize him and give him the tools to succeed, right? 63% power play share last year, 13 power play points. That's showing no good, right? We got to see a lot more. I got Fantilli for 18 power play points. So I see him taking a step there. Career high, 68 points. but yeah, it's bonus, really. It's that talk it kind of mentality, Rick Tocchet mentality, like Craig Berube mentality, where it's like, let's play the right way. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to poo-poo that, because obviously, like, you have to play right defensively, but you have to give your offensive players the leash to do what they do. And even if they make a mistake, or even if they get out of what they're supposed to be doing, right, you have to live with that. That's called breakage, right? And with a player like Adam Fantilli and his ability to generate offense off the rush, you got to let him do that, right? And you got to give him that opportunity in the power play. So, yeah, I'm excited about the player. I love him in the 8th round. I love what you're talking about there. I'm picking him up there as well. Fade centers, because you got Fantilli, you got Logan Cooley out here in the later rounds, and these guys are, they'll be able to do some stuff for you.
Valeri Nichushkin, I have for 26 goals, 30 assists, 56 points. You have for 27 goals, 33 assists, and 60 points. Kind of projecting him here as left wing on the top line here. I don't know that that's the way that it'll play out all year long, but I do think they'll at least give it a shot with him being on the top line here. I don't think that it's going to be a huge year for Nichushkin. I think there is ceiling for him to get in a best case scenario. Again, it's a Rick bonus team, and that really does hurt the ceilings of a lot of these players. But in a very best case scenario, I could see him touch 70 points again. But I think more than likely he's going to be in this 55 to 60 range.
Yep. I mean, this is a new face in a new place. You always have to be a little bit wary of that, right? I love the player. I've always liked Valeri Nichushkin. I think losing him with Colorado, going back to them, it was always him versus Arturi Lehkonen in terms of the guys that were getting power play, the guys that were getting, good even strength ice time. And that's why I like Lehkonen a little bit more now that Nuke's gone. And I like it better for Nichushkin as well, because they signed him to, he's going to get good opportunity here. I think, like, they brought him in for a reason. He's a great power play performer. Just stay healthy, stay sane in the dressing room. Can you help us out? And this is a guy that can, he can do all the right things off the rush. He's got underrated zone defense. Like, this is a guy that could actually endear himself a little bit to Rick Bowness if he's not like a complete dingus in the dressing room.
Agreed. Let's talk about the other Russian on the potential top line here, Kirill Marchenko. I have for 31 goals, 42 assists, 73 points. You have for 29 goals, 44 assists, 73 points. Very close on our projections of Marchenko. Yeah, Marchenko had a tremendous start to last year and then really fell off as the year progressed and was not a bonus fit. I think that's fair to say. I worry about that, but I think the caliber of the player is good enough that he can still hit this 70 to 75 point range, even in those scenarios. We did get some, I don't even know if it's news, to be honest. We heard a report from a Russian reporter for a Russian website saying that there are imminent trade talks between the Blue Jackets and 2 other teams around Kirill Marchenko, and that he's going to be moved very soon. So at the time of this recording, that's all that we got. But it could be a complete fabrication, or it could be something where he's moved and this projection is obsolete by the time we post it. So that's where we're at as of today. But I think we're probably aligned, especially with our projections being so close on the player here, Blake. But again, it does feel like the best case scenario is probably under a different coach.
Yeah. Again, going back to like what Bonus brought here, this defensive structure, this, effort-based play, this grinding style, like that works for some people, right? Like heavy players, like, or vets, like a Sean Monahan, or like a Charlie Coyle, right? But finesse players like Kirill Marchenko, they get left out in the cold and they get told they're not playing on the right side of the puck, right? So that said, I love Kirill Marchenko. I think, if he's still with the Columbus, I think, we'll see. I'm sure he was given sort of a homework to-do list for the offseason. Like, this is what's expected of you. This is how we're going to be playing. I think his role is really secure. Like, he's their number one offensive player, in my opinion. Should be line 1, power play 1. And we'll see what they do. Like, this is his contract year as well. So I can't see how you get rid of a player like this at age 26, with the trajectory that Marchenko has. How can you justify a trade there unless it's the actual player that's sort of requesting it, right? And maybe that's the case, but If not, I think we're going to see a return to form to some degree from Marchenko. He had a 72-point pace last year. I think, we see more of that while he sort of acclimates to what Rick Bowness is doing.
Next up, Sean Monahan, 17 goal, 28 assist, 45-point projection for me. 13 goal, 28 assist, 41-point projection for you. I do think Sean Monahan probably has a little bit of a bounce back from a pretty terrible year last year. I think he's probably a guy who can adapt to a Rick Bowness style more quickly than a lot of the other younger players on this team. I will not be drafting Sean Monahan anywhere this year, though.
No, hell no. Oh my God, that's depressing. But you stream him in maybe if he's power play 1. I'm not really giving him power play 1 at this point. No. Like I've got him, 9.5 power play points is what I projected for. He did play through injuries last year, right? Like toughed it out, played through some injuries there, trying to get Columbus into the playoffs, right? And it just didn't happen. But he's only 31. It's a really old 31, Sean Monahan, because of the injuries that he's dealt with throughout his career. But I still think it's a guy that, him and Charlie Coyle, they're kind of like passing ships in the night. I don't know if they're going to prioritize Coyle more now because of his contract and what he was able to do. I've still got Monahan as my C2 there, but yeah, I think it's going to be like he pays for 38. I've got him for 40. That seems about right to me. And it's just not a player I'm really going to be very interested in at all.
Yeah, I think to the point about second line versus third line, it's kind of in the eye of the beholder. I think both lines will probably play similar minutes. Maybe Monahan's line plays a little bit less. I have Kent Johnson as left wing 2 on this line here for 17 goals, 21 assists, 38 points. You have him for 19 goals, 30 assists for 49 points. This is the biggest difference I think that we've had so far on any of the teams. 11-point difference between the two of us here. I assume a good chunk of this is on the power play. I only have him for 9 power play points, but let's dig in here, Blake.
I got him for 13.8, so 14. I got him for 14 power play points. So yeah, there's a little bit of juice there, but there's a lot of stuff with Kent Johnson that went on last year. And one of the main things, Nate, was that he lost 12 pounds like in season. This guy just lost weight, and he's already a slight guy. And I think that plus the coaching change really sort of affected him, right? And he wasn't able to gain Rick Bowness's confidence at all, as to your point, right? Like he didn't know who he was, but it was a really devastating season for Kent Johnson. This is a guy that was on the rise. Like he had 57 points the season previous. And that's, to me, when he's kind of used the way that he should be used. And I really believe that he's an amazing facilitator. And the reason I've got him on power play 1 is I think that is a role that he excels at. I think this could be one of the best power play performers on the team, but it doesn't matter a hill of beans if you can't get on in power play 1. So I've got him having a big bounce back. Like there's a lot of talk about how he's sort of preparing for the off season and bulking up and all this stuff, right? It's all just lip service until we see what actually happens. But this is not a player that you just let, like a toot in the wind, just fly away, right? This is a young guy that is amazing offensively for a team that needs offense, and their power play was terrible, and he's a great power play performer. So I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching a bit. I don't know. Talk me off the ledge, Nate. What's going on?
I agree with your assessment of Kent Johnson, the player. I do think that there is a great player here, one that should be highly valued by his team. I do not believe that team is the Columbus Blue Jackets. I do not believe that coach is Rick Bowness. We talked about Nikolaj Ehlers earlier in the show, and him just being completely deprioritized, both at even strength and on the top power play. Who was his coach through the majority of that? It was Rick Bowness. So I don't think Rick Bowness cares at all for your feelings about Kent Johnson.
He doesn't.
I don't think he looks at this player even close to the same way that we do for fantasy, and that's kind of what's driven my projection of him here. I think that there's a pretty good chance that Kent Johnson finds second life on another team at some point in the future, but just kind of continuing the theme of morbidity with this team. I don't think that this is going to be the year where we get some life out of Kent Johnson for fantasy. Connor Garland, I have for 14 goals, 24 assists, 38 points. You have him for 16 goals, 20 assists, and rounding down to 36 points there. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time with Connor Garland. Best case scenario is still probably in the mid 40s for points. I don't think he's going to be anything more than maybe a streamer.
Yeah, best case scenario was him on the Canucks, which isn't something you can say about a lot of people. But yeah, moving to Columbus, he becomes even more of a middle sixer as opposed to in Vancouver. He was sometimes getting a 20-minute treatment, and there's no way he's getting that here in Columbus. So yeah, very good player. Again, like Ken Johnson, he's not going to get the minutes he needs. I think Ken Johnson will, but Connor Garland definitely will not get the minutes he needs to be fantasy relevant.
All right, Charlie Coyle, I have for 21 goals, 37 assists, 58 points. You have him for 16 goals, 38 assists, 54 points. I am pretty sure that this is a guy that Rick Bowness is going to love, and that has definitely influenced my projection here. I do think that he is on power play 1 more often than guys like Kent Johnson, more similarly to a Nichushkin in terms of the average time on ice there. So I do think that what we saw from Charlie Coyle last year, Rick Bowness does absolutely love and salivates over these veterans who play the game the right way, and that he can just plug into places that they probably shouldn't be and watch them play play good old fashioned hockey the way that it was in like the 60s when he was growing up. But anyway, enough of that. I think Charlie Coyle gets a good dose of time here, and he can be fantasy relevant as a result.
The Coiler. Oh, I love that we get to talk about the Coiler. He's filling the bowl. You know what the Coiler does now? He upper decks. All right. You know what the upper decker is? I think we talked about this, Nate, but yeah.
We have, yes.
Yeah. You open the back part up and you go in there, right? And then when you flush the toilet, the poop comes out and yeah, people get upset. That's what he does. All right. That's the type of person Charlie Coyle is. All right. And that's confirmed. But in terms of fantasy, yeah, I don't have him on power play 1, but I could absolutely see it. I've got him for 54. Just gonna be a streamer. I can't imagine where we're like, oh, Charlie Coyle's out there. I gotta get him. Like, no. But yeah, I cannot stop thinking about the poop emoji. I'm sorry, Nate. Let's move on to another player.
All right. Let's get the other 2 line mates there from the third line. This was a pretty consistent line, actually, for the Blue Jackets, and probably one that I think Bonus will really like. Cole Sillinger, Matthew Olivier, the wingers there. Sillinger just signed an extension here. I have him for 12 goals, 26 assists, 38 points. You have him for 12 goals, 21 assists, rounding up to 34 points there. Matthew Olivier, I have for 19 goals, 15 assists, 34 points. You have him for 15 goals, 17 assists, and 32 points. Just 2 guys that are like deeper league streamers. Olivier, obviously, a guy who fights, a guy who hits a lot. So if you're in your bangers cats there, that might be something to look at.
Absolutely, buddy. I love Matthew Olivier. I actually streamed him in a few times to great benefit last year. So yeah, he's a great banger. Yeah, Cole Sillinger, great, better play in real life than in fantasy.
299 hits, 142 penalty minutes is what I have.
Does
Matthew
that?
Olivier for.
Oh my God.
Dmitry Voronkov, I have for 18 goals, 12 assists, 30 points. You have him for 23 goals, 18 assists, 41 points. Blake, explain yourself.
I guess my thought is with Johnson and Voronkov is like Columbus needs those players. They're under contract. They need them. So if they're not going to trade them, they need them. And Voronkov has had a lot of success here, just the way Kent Johnson has. So I just don't think those are players like, normal coaches would just throw away. Sure. Rick Boner, I mean, maybe he does, right? And he's like, we don't need this. But I mean, Voronkov's an animal in front of the net. This is a great net front player. He was battling through injuries last year. Couldn't get out of the doghouse. Rick Boner is there. Same with Ken Johnson. But I think there was a plan for both of them. And everything I've read in the offseason about what Columbus wants to do, like they need some improvement internally, right? Because they didn't pick up, they got Nichushkin. That's great. Who else? I mean, we got Lomberg, right? That's great, but there's nothing that's moving the needle here. So for them to get back to where they need to be, they need better performances from Kent Johnson and from Dmitry Voronkov. And I really do believe that Voronkov has more to give. Maybe he gets on power play 2, gets a little, gets the biz there. It's not a massive projection for him, but I like him as an efficient shooter. Got him for 23 goals. So yeah, I don't know. That seems a little high, but maybe I'll look at that later. But one thing I do want to say too, and I did find the quote, but the GM there, Don Waddell, talked about Johnson staying in Columbus for 3 weeks after the season, just to work with the team's strength and conditioning staff, Voronkov, as well as spending the offseason in Connecticut rather than going home to Russia. So I love those type of things. I think it makes a difference, right? These are guys that they understand the assignment. They know that they sort of effed up last year in terms of preparation or whatever it was, right? And now they've taken the notes from the new coach and they're getting to biz and they're trying to prepare themselves in the best way possible. So 2 players that are taking their offseason really seriously. And I think one of them is probably going to have a bounce back.
Right, get to the defense. The linchpin here, Zach Werenski, I have for 24 goals, 63 assists, 87 points. You have for 23 goals, 66 assists for 89 points. Again, similar to Makar, the only question here is where are you drafting Zach Werenski? I would put him, for myself personally, kind of just behind that tier, the Makar tier. I wouldn't take him over Makar anywhere. But yeah, talk to me about him amidst Matthews, amidst Jack Hughes, even compare him to Quinn Hughes, Evan Bouchard, the other defenseman there. Where are you taking Zach Werenski?
I still love the player and I'm taking him high, but it's this Rick Bowness thing. It's really kind of yucking my yum, like in terms of fantasy, we want like more of a freewheeling style. And like I said, I do think that Werenski maybe benefited from some more defensive structure there and was able to not overextend himself as much and was able to be a bit more efficient. But that said, I think I'm good with him at the end of the first round. I'm good with him at the start of the second round, but I'm taking guys like Jack Hughes. I'm taking Austin Matthews over him, right? Jack Eichel's getting interesting there over Werenski. Like, I don't know, where are you seeing Werenski fall?
Yeah, I think he falls into that tier pretty neatly for me. I do think that I could see Bouchard or Quinn Hughes having a better year than him, and so that kind of forms a tier for me between those guys. And then, yeah, you mix in the forwards. I think Eichel, Hughes, Matthews. Maybe you want to even throw in guys like Jason Robertson, like
yep.
Matt Boldy, like Marty Necas. I could see arguments for including those guys in that tier as well. So it really does kind of muddy up those waters there, and it does become, to me at least, a little bit more of a game plan around how are you going to handle the turn, who do you think comes back to you, that kind of stuff, as to where you take Werenski versus maybe letting him fall and maybe taking in another defenseman that you consider similar in the back half in the second. So I think there's some different ways to play it, but agree with everything you said about him there.
That's nice.
All right, let's round it out with the other 3 Columbus defensemen: Damon Severson, Ivan Provorov, and Denton Mateychuk. Severson I have for 10 goals, 29 assists, 39 points. You have him for 8 goals, 27 assists, and 34 points, the round down there. Ivan Provorov, I have for 8 goals, 23 assists, 31 points. You have him for 7 goals, 24 assists, and 31 points. And Mateychuk, I have for 10 goals, 24 assists, 34 points. You have him for 11 goals, 25 assists, 36 points. I am not excited about any of these options. They all feel like closer to the ceiling than the floor in this Columbus scenario for me. So, yeah, I'm not excited about it. I'm definitely not excited about Ivan Provorov's head of hair. Talk to me about this, Blake.
Just take it off at this point, buddy. What are you doing? What the hell are you doing? This is Nair. All right. That's something I didn't even know existed until later in life. But yeah, you just put it on your arm. If you want like smooth arms, you just put that on and the hair goes away. That's nice. Don't drink it though, folks. Okay. Don't put that in your mouth. I'm sorry about this. All right. Yeah. I mean, whatever. Severson, I love the pairing with Werenski. I think that, yeah, it's really helpful. That's one of those things where they complement each other really well. If Werenski wants to go skating, Severson will anchor it and make sure that defensively the team is reasonable, right? And certainly better under Rick Bowness, all right? Shout out Rick Bowness. But Provorov, yeah, I mean, that there's nothing really there, right? This is a guy that's getting older too. I mean, you can maybe a peripheral streamer, but I don't know. I'm never really interested in that player. Then Mateychuk, Denton Mateychuk, hell yeah. Yeah, I got a bit of space for him. I want to see what goes on. Like that's an offensive defenseman who can potentially do stuff, but we need to see what his role is going to be. Right now, he's that third pairing, sheltered, right? Limited power play time, but there's some bits and pieces there. This guy got 13 goals last year. Hell yeah. I mean, shot 15%, but Yeah, that's no joke, right? So this is could be an efficient shooter, maybe in the style of like a Bo Byram or something like that. Maybe we get a 40-point season out of Denton Matejchuk. I could see that. But yeah, at all streamer level, what the hell am I talking about? Just please, Werenski, do not get injured. All right. Otherwise, we have to talk about these players more.
Agree with all that. I don't really have anything to add. You're not drafting these guys. And if we are talking about them for fantasy, something ill has befallen Zach Werenski. All right, Blake, top 3 targets. Give it to me one more time.
Hit me, baby, one more time. Oh, that song sucked. It was terrible. I didn't even like it at the time. You know what I mean? She's got some good Toxic. Hell yeah.
Toxic is great.
Get Toxic in your life. That's good stuff. All right, anyways, forget about that. Leave Brittany alone. Adam Fantilli, number 1 with Bullet. I'm very interested in Adam Fantilli. The value, the potential, like the ceiling. There's lots to like there. Nichushkin I've got as my number 2. I think he's going to get a bigger piece of the pie here in Columbus as long as he's able to stay healthy and play hockey the right way. All right, on the defensive side of the puck, which I think he shouldn't have a problem with. And then I've got Kent Johnson on here as an absolute sleeper that Nate is literally sleeping on. He doesn't even remember the man's name, so that's fine. But Kent Johnson scored 57 points in this league, Nate, last season. All right, so he's got some bits and pieces. A good offensive player, but yeah, I mean, you could pick him up as a last pick or stream him in your first week, and you're loving life.
Top 3 targets from me, Adam Fantilli, number 1. I think if anybody takes a big step on this team this year, it is Adam Fantilli. Kirill Marchenko, I think there's the bones of a 90-point player there. I don't think we get it this year under bonus, but I just generally want to bet on talent like that. And Valeri Nichushkin, I do think he has the defensive conscience that bonus will be looking for, and that will ingratiate himself to bonus, maybe even more than the other guys on that potential top line. So Nichushkin is my number 3 there. Well, Blake, we made it to the end. If you made it this far with us 2.5 hours in, you should definitely click the link in the description. Join the Apples and Ginos Discord server. Come talk fantasy hockey with us some more because we'd love to hear.
No one is doing this, Nathan. No one is strapping in for 2.5 hours. That's what you get here at Apples and Ginos, folks.
That's absolutely right. If there was something in this episode that made you perk up your ears, if you think we've missed anything on these teams, do hit us up in the comments. We read all the comments and we respond to most of them. So I do appreciate all the feedback we get, and it does help us out with the algorithm as well. My voice is leaving me, so we better call it for this episode. Hopefully it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard came from Natural Stat Trick and 18 Skaters. All the micro stats you heard came from all 3 zones. Many thanks to Matt Creamer for supplying the music for the podcast. That's it, folks. Much love.